Hi guys, and welcome to Boring History Story Relaxing. Tonight we step quietly into a world where the night feels longer than it should, where the cold presses close to your skin, and where the simple act of staying warm becomes the center of your entire existence. You find yourself standing at the edge of a small medieval village, the kind that rarely appears in grand history books, yet holds the steady rhythm of ordinary lives. Frost clings to the ground beneath your feet, and the air carries that unmistakable stillness that only deep winter can create. It feels calm, almost peaceful at first glance, but there is a quiet truth beneath it all. You probably would not survive this, not without learning very quickly how these people move, how they endure, and how they make it through nights that seem to stretch on forever. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, share where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. It is always comforting to know who is out there listening in the dark. Now dim the lights and let yourself settle into the slow, steady rhythm of this place. You stand there for a moment longer than you expect, not moving yet, just taking in the shape of the village before you. It is smaller than you imagined. A handful of low houses, their roofs uneven and heavy with frost, cluster together, as if they're trying to stay warm simply by being close. There is no glow of street lamps, no distant hum of electricity, only a faint suggestion of life hidden behind wooden walls. A commonly accepted understanding is that most medieval villages were made up of simple timber and wattle structures, often insulated with mud or straw materials that offered only limited protection against the cold. As you look at these homes, you begin to understand what that means in a more physical way. The walls are not thick in the way you might hope. The doors do not seal tightly. Everything here feels slightly exposed. You take your first step forward. The ground beneath your boots crunches softly, the frost breaking in a delicate, almost satisfying way. It is a small sound, but in this quiet it feels amplified. You instinctively pause as if worried you might disturb something. But nothing reacts. The village remains still, wrapped in its own slow breath. You move again more carefully now. The cold air reaches you immediately, slipping into your sleeves, brushing against your neck. It is not the sharp, shocking cold of a sudden winter storm, but something more persistent. A steady presence, the kind that does not demand your attention all at once, but quietly wears you down over time. You inhale, the air feels thin, dry. It carries a faint scent of smoke, subtle but unmistakable. Somewhere nearby a fire is burning. Not brightly, not extravagantly, but enough to keep something alive through the night. That smell draws you forward. As you walk deeper into the village, you begin to notice small details that were not obvious at first. A wooden bucket left near a doorway, its surface rimmed with ice. A stack of firewood carefully arranged, each piece cut and placed with intention. Nothing here is wasted. Nothing is decorative for the sake of appearance. Everything serves a purpose. A lesser-known detail is that gathering and storing firewood was one of the most important preparations for winter survival, often determining whether a household could maintain even minimal warmth through the coldest months. As you pass that stack of wood, you realize it is not just a pile. It is security. It is time. It is survival measured in logs. You slow your pace. There is a quiet rhythm to this place even now, even in the depths of night. You can feel it in the stillness, not emptiness, but pause, as if the village itself is resting, conserving energy for what is to come. You notice a faint glow ahead. It is soft, almost hidden, slipping through the narrow gaps of a shuttered window. You find yourself drawn toward it, your steps guided not by urgency, but by curiosity. As you approach, the warmth becomes slightly more noticeable. Not enough to comfort you fully, but enough to remind you what warmth feels like. You stop just short of the wall. The wood of the house is rough, uneven beneath your fingertips as you rest your hand against it. It is cold to the touch, holding the night within it. You lean slightly closer, listening without fully intending to. Inside there is movement, quiet, slow, deliberate. The soft shift of someone adjusting their position, the faint crackle of a fire that is being carefully maintained rather than allowed to roar. No voices, no laughter, just the subdued presence of people who understand that the night is not a time for excess. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers experienced winter nights as peaceful or oppressive as a time of rest or a prolonged endurance shaped by cold and darkness. Standing here, you begin to sense that it is both. There is a calm to it, yes, but also a weight. You pull your cloak tighter around yourself, though it does little to keep the cold out. It helps just slightly enough to make you feel less exposed. But you can already tell that clothing alone is not enough here. Warmth is something that must be built, maintained, protected. You step back from the wall, the glow fades slightly as you move away, and the cold returns more fully, wrapping around you again without hesitation. It is patient, this cold. It does not rush, it simply waits. You turn your gaze back across the village. Everything remains as it was, quiet, still, enduring. And you begin to understand something simple, something that will follow you through every moment of this long night. Nothing here is easy. Not the warmth, not the rest, not even the silence. You take another slow breath, letting it settle in your chest, feeling the chill of it linger as you exhale. Then, without hurry, you begin to move again, stepping further into the village, ready to learn how these nights unfold one quiet hour at a time. You continue forward, your steps slow and deliberate, as if the ground itself asks you not to rush. The cold no longer surprises you now. It settles in becoming something you measure rather than something you resist. You feel it along your cheeks, at the tips of your fingers, in the quiet space between each breath. You inhale again, a little deeper this time, The air sharpens as it enters your lungs, carrying that same faint dryness you noticed before. It is not the kind of air that nourishes easily. It feels thinner, almost reluctant to offer comfort. You swallow, and there is a slight tightness in your throat, a subtle reminder that even breathing here takes a little more effort than you are used to. A well-established observation is that cold winter air holds far less moisture than warmer air, which can make breathing feel drier and more taxing over time. You do not think about the science of it in this moment, but your body understands it instinctively. Each breath feels purposeful, measured. You draw your cloak closer again. The fabric shifts against your shoulders, heavy and slightly stiff, as if it too has absorbed the cold. It traps a small pocket of warmth around you, but it is fragile, temporary. You can feel how easily it could be lost with a single careless movement. You keep walking. The village path curves gently ahead, not designed but formed over time by countless footsteps. It is uneven, slightly hardened by frost and marked by shallow impressions that have frozen in place. You follow it without thinking, your body falling into a quiet rhythm. Step, pause, step again. There is no urgency here, no reason to hurry. Night stretches long and everything within it moves accordingly. You begin to notice how sound behaves differently in this cold. Each step you take carries farther than you expect, the faint crunch echoing softly into the stillness. Even your breathing feels louder, more present. You become aware of yourself in a way that is difficult to ignore. You slow your breath. In, out, careful not to disturb the quiet more than necessary. A curious detail noted in some accounts is that snow and frost can subtly change how sound travels, sometimes carrying it farther in still conditions, sometimes muffling it completely when the ground is softer. Tonight it seems to do both. Your steps are clear, yet the village itself remains hushed, as if absorbing anything that might grow too loud. You glance toward one of the nearby houses. The door is closed, but not perfectly. A thin line of darkness marks the gap where wood meets wood. No light escapes from here, no sound. It feels empty at first, but you sense that it is not. Just quiet, just still. You imagine the people inside, curled together perhaps, wrapped in whatever layers they can manage, breathing slowly, conserving warmth without even thinking about it, their bodies adjusting in small ways, shifting closer, turning inward, making the most of what little heat they have. You continue walking. The path narrows slightly, guiding you between two houses that stand closer together than the others. Here the air feels different, less open. The wind does not reach you in the same way. The cold is still present, but it settles rather than moves. You pause for a moment. It is subtle, but you can feel the difference. The absence of wind changes everything. The cold becomes quieter, less aggressive. Still uncomfortable, but more predictable. You tilt your head slightly, listening. There it is again. A faint sound. Not from inside a house this time, but from somewhere beyond. A distant movement, perhaps an animal shifting in the dark, perhaps someone turning in their sleep. It is too far away to be certain. You do not investigate. There is no need. In this place, not every sound requires an answer. You resume walking slower now. Your body has begun to adjust in its own quiet way. The initial tension has eased. Your shoulders are no longer raised against the cold. Your steps have become steadier, more efficient. You waste less movement even without realizing it. A small but interesting observation is that people living in consistently cold environments often develop subtle habits that reduce heat loss, such as minimizing unnecessary motion and keeping their limbs close to their bodies. You notice yourself doing exactly that now. Your arms remain near your sides. Your stride is shorter, more contained. You exhale slowly. Your breath lingers in the air for a moment, a faint cloud that fades almost as soon as it appears. You watch it without thinking, drawn to its brief existence. It is one of the few visible signs of life out here, something that confirms you are present in this quiet space. You look upward. The sky is clear, stretching wide and dark above you. The stars are sharper than you expected, more defined, as if the cold itself has carved them into the sky. There is no haze, no distraction, just stillness. Historians still argue whether medieval people experienced the night sky with a deeper sense of awareness than we do today, whether it was simply another part of their routine noticed, but not reflected upon in any profound way. Standing here, you find it difficult not to notice. It feels too present to ignore. You lower your gaze again. The village remains unchanged, yet you feel as though you have already moved deeper into it, not just in distance, but in understanding. The cold, the quiet, the rhythm of movement. It is all beginning to make sense in a way that words cannot fully explain. You take another step, then another. Your body no longer resists the night in the same way. It moves with it, accepts it. And somewhere in that slow adjustment, you begin to realize that survival here is not about fighting the cold. It is about learning how to exist within it. You pull your cloak slightly tighter once more, not out of urgency, but out of habit now. A small, practiced motion, the kind that repeats itself without thought. Then you continue forward deeper into the village, following the path as it leads you toward whatever warmth and life waits ahead. You continue along the narrow path, your pace steady now, your body no longer resisting each step, but settling into the quiet demands of the night. The cold remains with you, constant and patient, yet it feels less like an intruder and more like something that belongs here. Ahead, the faint glow you noticed earlier becomes clearer. Not bright, not welcoming in any obvious way, just a soft, wavering light that seeps out from a low chimney and the smallest cracks around a shuttered window. It does not reach far into the open air, but it is enough to pull your attention. You move closer. The smell of smoke grows stronger, thicker, now carrying with it a mixture of wood ash and something slightly sweet. It lingers in the air, clinging to the space between the houses, settling into your senses until it feels almost comforting. You pause again, just a few steps from the wall. The chimney below you exhales a slow, uneven stream of smoke. It does not rise quickly into the sky. Instead, it drifts, hesitates, then curls back on itself as if unsure where to go. The cold air seems to hold it in place, keeping it low and close to the village. A commonly observed detail is that in colder conditions, smoke from chimneys can hang lower in the air due to temperature differences, creating that faint haze often associated with winter settlements. You can see it now, not as a distant idea, but as something real, something that surrounds you. You take a slow breath. The smoke is not entirely pleasant. It scratches slightly at the back of your throat, mixing with the dryness you already feel, and yet there is something reassuring about it. It means fire. It means effort. It means that inside these walls, people are working to keep the cold at bay. You lift your hand and place it lightly against the wooden wall. It is still cold, but not as sharply as before. There is a faint difference now, a subtle hint of warmth that has managed to reach the outer surface. It is small, almost unnoticeable, but once you feel it, you cannot ignore it. You lean a little closer, listening again. Inside, the sounds are clearer than before. A gentle crackling, the soft shift of embers being nudged or adjusted. Someone moves not abruptly, but with care, as though every motion has been practiced many times. You imagine the space within. A single room, most likely. Low ceiling, thick with the scent of smoke that never fully escapes. The fire at its centre, not large, not dramatic, but steady. Everything arranged around it because it has to be. An interesting and somewhat lesser-known detail is that many medieval homes lacked proper chimneys as we think of them today, often relying on simple smoke holes or poorly vented hearths, which meant that indoor air could become thick with smoke during long winter nights. As you stand here, you begin to understand what that might feel like. Warmth, yes, but at a cost. You shift your weight slightly. The ground beneath you feels firmer here, less exposed than the open path. Perhaps the repeated movement of people has packed it down. Perhaps the slight warmth from the house has softened it before it froze again. You glance toward the window. It is small, barely more than an opening covered by a wooden shutter. A thin line of light escapes from its edge, flickering gently. You resist the urge to look inside. It feels like something private, something meant to be experienced only by those within. Instead, you step back. The warmth fades quickly as you move away, the cold returning without hesitation. It fills the space around you again, wrapping itself around your shoulders, slipping through the edges of your cloak. You exhale slowly. Your breath forms that familiar pale cloud lingering for just a moment before dissolving into the night. You watch it, noticing how quickly it disappears, how easily warmth can be lost out here. You begin to understand that the warmth inside these homes is fragile. It exists only because it is constantly maintained. The fire must be fed, the space must be shared, nothing about it is effortless. Historians still argue whether the smoke-filled interiors of medieval homes caused more harm than benefit during winter months, offering necessary warmth, while also exposing inhabitants to long-term respiratory strain. Standing here, breathing in the faint traces of smoke, even outside, you can sense that balance. It is not ideal, it is simply necessary. You take another step along the wall, then another. Each house you pass carries its own variation of the same quiet story. Some emit a slightly stronger glow, others remain darker. Their fires perhaps smaller, their resources more limited. You begin to notice these differences without fully meaning to. A house with more smoke might have more wood to burn. A dimmer glow might mean careful rationing. Nothing here is random. You pause between two homes where the space opens slightly. The air shifts again, less influenced by the immediate warmth of a single structure. The cold feels sharper here, more exposed. You pull your cloak closer, your fingers tightening slightly at the edge of the fabric. It helps, but only just. You listen once more. The village is not still. It is simply quiet in a way that requires patience to hear. A distant cough, the soft rustle of straw, the faint creak of wood adjusting to the temperature. Small sounds, each one brief, each one fading quickly. You stand there for a moment longer than you need to, not because you are unsure where to go, but because there is something about this place that slows you down. It encourages stillness, observation, a kind of quiet awareness that is easy to overlook in a louder world. You turn slightly, looking back the way you came. The path is still there, faintly marked, leading through the village like a thread. The houses sit low and close, their presence steady, unchanged. Then you turn forward again. The faint glow of another chimney draws your attention further ahead, promising more of the same quiet life, the same careful balance between warmth and cold. You take a breath, then step forward. And as you move deeper into the village, you begin to feel that you are no longer just passing through this place. You are beginning to belong to its rhythm. You move closer to the next house, drawn not by curiosity alone now, but by a quiet need to understand what lies behind those wooden walls. The cold has taught you enough already to know that what happens inside matters far more than what you see outside. The door is slightly uneven, its surface worn smooth in places where hands have pushed against it countless times. You hesitate for a moment, then reach out and press gently. It opens with soft resistance. A narrow gap forms and immediately the air changes. Warmth does not rush out to greet you. It seeps slowly, carrying with it the dense scent of smoke, damp wood, and something faintly earthy. It is thicker than the air outside, heavier in a way that settles into your lungs differently. You step inside. The space is smaller than you expected. Low ceiling, rough beams overhead. Walls that seem closer than they should be, as if the room itself has been shaped by necessity rather than comfort. The light comes almost entirely from the hearth at the centre, its glow uneven, shifting with each movement of the fire. Your eyes adjust gradually. Shapes begin to form. A bench along one wall, a pile of straw and fabric in another corner. Simple tools resting where they were last used. Nothing here is arranged for appearance. Everything exists because it must. A widely accepted understanding is that most peasant homes in medieval Europe consisted of a single room where cooking, sleeping, and daily life all took place together. As you stand here, that reality becomes immediate. There are no separate spaces, no privacy in the way you might imagine it. Life is shared continuously. You take another step inward. The floor beneath you is packed earth, firm but uneven. It holds a faint trace of warmth closer to the fire, though the edges of the room remain noticeably colder. You can feel the difference through your boots, subtle but unmistakable. The hearth draws your attention. It is not large, but it is alive. Flames move carefully, not wild or uncontrolled, but guided. The wood burns slowly, each piece placed with intention, each ember preserved as if it matters. And it does. You can sense that no one here allows the fire to grow careless. Too much flame would waste fuel. Too little would risk losing warmth entirely. It is a balance that must be maintained hour by hour. A lesser-known observation is that in many households, keeping the fire alive overnight was essential, as relighting it from scratch could be difficult and time-consuming without modern tools. Looking at the hearth now, you realize it's not just a source of comfort. It is something closer to a responsibility. You move closer, extending your hand slightly. The warmth reaches you in a way the outside never could. It settles into your fingers, your palms easing the stiffness that had quietly built there. It is not overwhelming. It does not erase the cold entirely, but it is enough to remind you what your body has been missing. You exhale slowly. The air inside feels different. Warmer, yes, but also thicker. It carries the constant presence of smoke, not overwhelming, but persistent. You notice how it lingers near the ceiling, forming a faint haze that never quite disappears. In one corner, a figure shifts. You had not noticed them at first. They are wrapped in layers of simple fabric, their posture curved inward as if conserving heat even while resting. Their movements are slow, deliberate. No energy is wasted. Another figure lies nearby, partially covered with cloth and straw. Their breathing is steady, though not entirely deep. You get the sense that sleep here is never complete, never entirely uninterrupted. A point sometimes mentioned in historical studies is that people in such environments often adapted to shared fragmented rest patterns influenced by both the cold and the need to tend the fire. Watching these figures, you begin to understand how that might feel. Sleep is not a single event. It is something that comes and goes. You shift your weight quietly, careful not to disturb them. The room itself seems to encourage silence, not enforced but natural. Sound does not carry here in the same way as outside. It settles quickly, absorbed by the low ceiling and the heavy air. You glance around again. The belongings are few. A wooden bowl, a tool worn smooth from use, a piece of cloth folded with care. Each item feels significant not because it is rare, but because it serves a purpose. Nothing here is excess. You lower yourself slightly, bringing your body closer to the fire. The warmth increases, though only within a limited range. You can feel how it fades as you move even a short distance away. It does not fill the room. It anchors a small space within it. You begin to understand why people gather close. Not out of habit alone, but because distance from the fire has immediate consequences. A step too far and the cold returns. Not dramatically, but steadily enough to be noticed. You hold your hands out a little longer. The sensation is almost calming now. The contrast between cold and warmth creates a rhythm of its own, one that your body begins to follow without effort. A question remains quietly present in your mind. Some scholars continue to discuss whether the constant exposure to smoke and close living conditions had a greater long-term impact on health than the cold itself. Sitting here feeling the warmth on your skin while breathing in the heavy air, you can sense that it is not a simple answer. You glance once more at the figures in the room. They remain still, their bodies adjusted to this environment in ways that feel practiced, almost instinctive. There is no sign of discomfort in their movements. No restlessness, just a quiet acceptance. You realize that what feels unusual to you is ordinary here. The closeness, the shared air, the constant presence of the fire. You shift slightly, adjusting your position near the hearth. The warmth follows you just enough, and as you sit there within this small dim space, you begin to understand something deeper than survival alone. This is not just about enduring the cold, it is about shaping your entire life around it. You remain close to the hearth, your hands still extended, your body slowly absorbing what little warmth the fire is willing to give. The longer you sit here, the more you begin to understand that this place is not simply part of the home. It is the center of everything. Nothing in the room exists independently of it. The fire shifts slightly, a small collapse of embers sending a brief pulse of brighter light across the walls. Shadows stretch and pull, then settle again. It is a quiet movement, but it draws your attention completely. You watch. There is a rhythm to the way the fire lives. It is not random. Each piece of wood burns at its own pace, each ember holding its heat as long as it can before dimming. Someone has arranged this carefully. You can see it in the spacing, in the way the flames do not compete with one another, but seem to share the limited fuel. A commonly accepted historical understanding is that the hearth served as the central feature of daily life in most medieval homes, providing heat, light, and a place to cook all in one shared space. Sitting here now, that idea feels less like a fact and more like an experience. Every movement in this room relates to the fire in some way. You lower your hands slightly, letting the warmth settle into your wrists and forearms. It does not spread far beyond that. The rest of your body still feels the cold lingering beneath your clothing, especially along your back where the fire cannot reach. You shift a little closer almost without thinking. The difference is immediate, not dramatic, but noticeable, enough to matter. You begin to understand why no one here sits far from the hearth unless they have no choice. Distance is not comfort, distance is risk. One of the figures near the fire stirs. Their movement is slow, controlled, as if even waking requires careful energy. They reach toward the hearth, adjusting a piece of wood with a simple tool. The motion is practiced. No hesitation, no wasted effort. The flames respond. They brighten slightly, then settle again into that steady, contained burn. The figure pauses for a moment, watching, making sure the fire will continue as intended. Only then do they relax back into their position. A small but intriguing detail sometimes mentioned in accounts of daily life is that tending the fire was often a shared responsibility with different members of the household, waking at intervals to ensure it did not die out. As you watch this quiet adjustment, you realize how essential that practice must have been. The fire cannot be trusted to care for itself. You lean forward slightly. The warmth reaches your face now, softening the tension you had not fully noticed before. Your breathing becomes easier, though the thickness of the air remains. Smoke drifts upward in faint layers, never fully leaving, always present in some form. You glance toward the ceiling. It is darkened, stained over time by the constant presence of smoke. The beams above carry that history, each layer of soot marking countless nights just like this one. You shift your position again, turning slightly so that more of your body faces the fire. The warmth responds, moving across your chest, your legs settling unevenly, but welcome all the same. You can feel how your body adjusts instinctively, seeking the most efficient way to capture heat. Another figure near the wall adjusts their covering. A piece of cloth is pulled tighter, their body curling inward just a little more. Even in rest, they remain aware of the temperature. Nothing here allows complete relaxation. There is always a small awareness, a quiet monitoring of comfort and survival. Some researchers have suggested that people living in such conditions developed a heightened sensitivity to subtle environmental changes, particularly shifts in temperature and airflow. Sitting here, you begin to feel that awareness forming in yourself. You notice the smallest changes now, the way the warmth fades if you lean back even slightly, the way a brief movement of air alters the feeling on your skin. You extend your hands once more. The fire answers. It does not give freely, but it gives enough. You listen. The crackle of the wood is steady, almost rhythmic. It fills the space in a way that is neither loud nor silent. It becomes part of the background, something your mind begins to accept without needing to focus on it. You notice something else. The absence of other sounds. No wind reaches inside these walls. No distant movement carries clearly through. The world outside feels separate, now distant in a way that is difficult to describe. You are here, inside this small circle of warmth, and everything beyond it feels less immediate. A question lingers quietly in your thoughts. Some historians continue to explore whether the central role of the hearth also shapes social behaviour, encouraging closeness and shared routines that would not exist in larger, more separated living spaces. As you look around this room, it seems almost certain. There is no way to avoid one another here, no space to retreat into solitude. Everything happens together. You glance again at the figures nearby. Even in stillness there is a connection between them. Not spoken, not active, but present. They share the same warmth, the same air, the same quiet. Dependence on the fire that holds this space together. You shift slightly closer once more. The warmth deepens just enough to ease the last stiffness in your fingers. You let them rest now, no longer reaching, simply existing within that limited comfort. Time moves differently here. You cannot measure it easily. There are no clocks, no clear markers. Only the slow consumption of wood, the gradual dimming and renewal of embers, the steady breathing of those around you. You watch the fire again. A small piece of wood shifts, collapsing into the glowing coals beneath. The light flickers, then steadies. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just the quiet continuation of something that must not stop. And as you sit there feeling the warmth that never quite reaches far enough, you begin to understand that this hearth is not just the centre of the room, it is the centre of the night itself. You remain seated near the hearth, your body now tuned to its limited warmth, your awareness shaped by its reach. The room has settled into a quiet pattern, one that does not ask for attention, yet slowly draws you deeper into it. A small movement breaks the stillness. The figure closest to the fire leans forward again, this time not to adjust the wood, but to reach for something resting near the edge of the hearth. A simple pot darkened from repeated use sits just within the glow. Its surface catches the firelight in dull reflections. You watch as it's lifted carefully. No sudden motion, no wasted effort. The contents are not visible at first, but a faint scent rises as the pot is moved. Something earthy, something warm. It is subtle, but after the cold air outside, it feels surprisingly rich. You inhale slowly. The smell lingers, blending with the smoke, forming something more complex than either on its own. It is not the kind of meal that fills a room with strong aromas. It stays close contained, much like everything else here. A well-supported observation is that winter meals in medieval villages were often simple and repetitive, relying heavily on stored grains, root vegetables, and whatever preserved food remained from earlier seasons. As you watch the pot being handled with such care, you understand why. Nothing here is abundant. Every portion matters. The figure sets the pot down between them and the others. There is no formal arrangement, no table, no structured setting. The food exists within reach of those gathered shared without ceremony. Another person shifts slowly, sitting up. Their movements are heavy, not from reluctance, but from the weight of the cold that still lingers in their body. They draw closer to the fire, closer to the pot, their hands extending cautiously as if measuring the distance. You notice how no one rushes. There is no urgency to eat quickly, no sense of scarcity that demands immediate action. Instead, there is a steady, deliberate pace. Each motion is considered, each movement balanced against the need to conserve energy. A wooden bowl is passed. It moves from one set of hands to another without words, no explanation, no instruction. The order is understood without being spoken. You receive it. The wood feels warm near the rim where it has absorbed some of the heat from the fire. The contents inside are thick, uneven, a mixture of grains and softened vegetables. Steam rises faintly, carrying that same earthy scent. You hesitate for a moment, not out of uncertainty but out of awareness. This is not food meant for indulgence. It is food meant to sustain. You lift it slowly. The warmth reaches your face before the first taste does. It is gentle, not overwhelming, but after the cold it feels significant. You take a small mouthful. The flavour is simple, plain, but not unpleasant. It fills your mouth with a steady warmth that spreads slowly, not in a sudden burst, but in a quiet, gradual way. You swallow, and you feel it settle within you, a small source of heat carried inward. A curious note found in some historical accounts is that meals like this were often eaten slowly, not only because of their texture, but also because stretching the experience helped maintain a sense of warmth and satisfaction over a longer period. As you take another small portion, you find yourself doing exactly that. You do not rush. There is no reason to. The others eat in the same way. Small portions, slow movements, occasional pauses as they adjust their position near the fire or shift their hands closer to the warmth. No one speaks, not because speech is forbidden, but because it is unnecessary. The quiet feels natural here, not imposed. The fire provides enough presence to fill the space. You notice the way the light changes as the pot is moved. It interrupts the glow, briefly casting new shadows across the walls, then settles again. Even these small changes feel noticeable, as if the room itself is sensitive to every movement. You lower the bowl slightly. Your hands remain wrapped around it, holding onto the warmth it provides. The heat does not last long once the bowl is set aside. You can feel it already beginning to fade. You bring it closer again, instinctively. A thought forms quietly in your mind. Some scholars continue to explore whether the act of sharing meals in such close proximity to the hearth strengthened social bonds in ways that extended beyond simple survival. Sitting here now, it feels likely. The shared warmth, the shared food, the shared silence. All of it connects the people in this space. You take another slow bite. The texture remains the same. Soft, slightly uneven filling, but not rich. It is not meant to excite the senses, it is meant to sustain them. You glance at the others. Their expressions are calm, focused not on the food itself, but on the act of eating, on the quiet process of maintaining their strength. One of them shifts slightly closer to you, not intentionally, perhaps, just following the natural pull of the warmth. The space between you becomes smaller, though no one acknowledges it. It simply happens. You finish the last of the contents in your bowl. There is no sense of completion in the way you might expect, no feeling of fullness that lingers, just a quiet easing of hunger to carry you forward. The bowl is passed on. It leaves your hands, its warmth fading almost immediately. You feel the absence of it, the return of the cooler air against your fingers. You bring your hands back toward the fire. The warmth meets them again, familiar now, something your body has begun to rely on. The pot is moved once more, its contents nearly gone. No one scrapes it completely clean. There is a balance even here, a quiet understanding of how much to take, how much to leave. You lean back slightly. The warmth fades just a little, enough for you to notice enough to remind you that comfort here is always temporary. The fire continues, the room settles again, and you begin to understand that even something as simple as a meal is not just about nourishment. It is part of the rhythm. A slow, steady way of moving through the long night. The last traces of the meal fade quietly, not with any clear ending, but with a gradual return to stillness. The pot is set aside, the bowls no longer passed, and the small movements that filled the space a moment ago settle back into calm. You notice it first in the light. Nothing changes dramatically. The fire still burns, the glow still reaches across the room, and yet there is a subtle shift, as if the space has exhaled and grown quieter within itself. You sit there, hands extended once more, letting the warmth return to your fingers. It feels familiar now, almost expected. Your body has begun to anticipate it, adjusting instinctively to its presence and its limits. Beyond the walls, night continues. You cannot see it from here, but you feel it. a kind of steady pressure that exists just outside, pressing gently against the boundaries of this small room. The darkness is not simply an absence of light. It has weight, duration. A broadly recognized point about medieval life is that once the sun set, most activity slowed dramatically due to the lack of reliable lighting. As you sit here, you understand that fully. There is no temptation to continue working late into the night. The environment itself encourages stillness. The fire shifts, a small pop, then a brief cascade of sparks that rise and vanish before reaching the darker air above. The sound is soft, but in this quiet it draws your attention immediately. You look around. The figures in the room have settled again. One leans against the wall, eyes closed but not fully asleep. Another adjusts their position on the straw, pulling their covering tighter. No one speaks, no one needs to. You begin to notice how the silence here is not empty. It's filled with small layered sounds, the faint crackle of the fire, the slow steady breathing of those around you, the occasional shift of fabric or straw. Each sound is gentle, but together they form something constant, something grounding. You listen more carefully. There is something beyond these walls. At first it is difficult to place, a distant noise carried through the night. Not loud, not clear, but present. You tilt your head like, it could be an animal moving somewhere at the edge of the village, or perhaps the wind brushing against distant trees. The sound comes and goes, never fully revealing itself. An interesting detail, sometimes mentioned in studies of rural life, is that nighttime in such environments was rarely completely silent, even when human activity ceased. Natural sounds often became more noticeable, filling the absence left by daytime work. You can feel that now. The outside world has not disappeared. It has simply changed its voice. You shift your position slightly. The warmth responds, though only within its limited reach. Your back cools as you lean away, your front warms as you turn toward the fire. It is a constant adjustment, one your body now makes without conscious thought. You glance toward the door. It remains closed, holding back the cold as best it can, but you can sense what lies beyond it. The open air, the long stretch of darkness, the stillness that covers the entire village. You imagine stepping outside again. The cold would return immediately. The warmth you have gathered would begin to fade. The quiet would feel larger, less contained. You stay where you are. The fire flickers. Time passes, though it is difficult to measure. There are no clear markers here, no signals that announce the movement from one hour to the next. Only the gradual shifting of light, the slow consumption of wood, the steady rhythm of breath. You feel your body beginning to relax. Not completely, never completely, but enough that your shoulders lower slightly, your movements grow slower. The tension that followed you in from the cold begins to ease. You blink. Your eyes feel heavier now, though you are not fully tired. It is a different kind of fatigue. Not sudden, not overwhelming, just a gradual pull toward stillness. A question remains quietly in your thoughts. Some historians continue to examine whether the long hours of darkness during winter months affected how people perceived time itself, stretching the night into something that felt both endless and deeply familiar. Sitting here, you begin to understand how that might be possible. You look back at the fire. It has become the only clear measure of change. A piece of wood collapses inward, its structure giving way to glowing embers. The light shifts, then steadies. The room adjusts with its shadows moving slightly before settling once more. You draw your cloak a little tighter. The fabric has warmed slightly from your time near the fire, but it does not hold that warmth for long. It fades quickly once you stop feeding it. You lean forward again. The warmth returns. It is a simple exchange, predictable, reliable in its own limited way. You listen once more. The distant sound returns softer this time, then fades again. The village remains still, its presence contained within these few structures, each one holding its own small pocket of life. You begin to feel the length of the night, not in hours, but in the way your body slows, in the way your thoughts drift without direction, in the way nothing seems to require immediate attention. You sit there watching the fire, listening to the quiet, feeling the balance between warmth and cold, and you realize that this is how the night unfolds here. not with events or changes, but with a steady, unbroken continuation. You remain where you are, your body angled toward the hearth, your senses slowly sharpening in the quiet rather than fading from it. The longer you sit, the more you begin to notice how the night is not defined by silence, but by the kind of sounds that only reveal themselves when everything else has stopped. At first it is the wood. A soft settling sound runs through the beams above, almost like a slow breath passing through the structure of the house itself. It is not sudden or alarming, just a gentle reminder that the building is alive in its own way, responding to the cold outside and the warmth within. You listen more closely. The fire continues its steady crackle, but now you hear the differences within it. A sharper snap when a small pocket of sap gives way. A quieter shift when embers collapse inward. Each sound distinct, yet part of a larger rhythm that repeats without ever becoming identical. You adjust your hands slightly closer. The warmth greets you again, though you are beginning to understand its boundaries well. It does not expand. It does not adapt to your needs. You must adapt to it. From somewhere behind you there is a faint rustle. You turn your head just enough to notice. One of the figures has shifted their covering, brushing softly against the straw beneath them. The sound is brief, but it lingers in your awareness longer than it should. In this environment, even the smallest movements carry meaning. A widely accepted observation about shared indoor spaces in this period is that people became highly attuned to subtle sounds, often recognizing the difference between ordinary movement and something unusual. Sitting here, you feel that sensitivity beginning to form within you. Your attention moves quickly but without panic. You listen again. There it is, a sound from outside, faint, distant, but clearer now. It comes in a slow pattern. A soft crunch, then a pause. Another crunch, slightly different in tone. You hold your breath for a moment, trying to understand it. Perhaps footsteps on frozen ground, or the movement of an animal passing along the edge of the village. You do not move. No one else reacts. The sound continues for a few moments, then fades, absorbed by the night beyond the walls. It leaves behind a deeper quiet, as if the space has settled again after a brief disturbance. You exhale slowly. Your breath blends into the warmth near the fire, less visible here than it was outside. The air carries it away quickly, mixing it with the constant presence of smoke. You glance toward the door again. It remains still, unchanged, holding its position against the outside world. And yet you are aware now that it is not a complete barrier. Sound finds its way through. The cold does too, in smaller, quieter ways. An interesting detail occasionally noted in studies of medieval homes is that despite their solid appearance, they often allowed small drafts and sounds to pass through, creating a constant subtle connection between inside and outside. You can feel that now. The house is shelter but not separation. You shift your weight slightly. The straw beneath you responds with a faint whispering sound, softer than you expect. It compresses and settles, adapting to your movement without resistance. You adjust again more carefully this time, aware of how even this small action adds to the soundscape of the room. The fire dips briefly, the flames lower, not disappearing but drawing closer to the embers. The light softens, shadows deepening along the edges of the room. For a moment the space feels smaller, more enclosed. Then, with a subtle movement, the figure nearest the hearth leans forward again. They do not rush. They simply shift a piece of wood, nudging it into a better position. The flames respond, slowly rising just enough to restore the light and warmth. A lesser-known observation is that maintaining a steady fire often required constant minor adjustments rather than large interventions, a practice that became second nature to those who relied on it daily. Watching this quiet motion, you can see that skill in action. It is not dramatic, it is precise. You return your attention to the sounds around you. The breathing of the others has deepened slightly, though not fully into sleep. There is a pattern to it, a shared rhythm that rises and falls gently like a tide that never quite reaches its peak. You listen for the outside again. Nothing now. Only the faint suggestion of distance, something you cannot fully hear but still sense. The village beyond this room remains present, each house holding its own quiet life, each space connected by the same long stretch of night. You feel your body settling further, Your muscles relax in small increments, your posture softening as you lean slightly closer to the fire. Your hands remain extended, though not as rigidly as before. They rest in the warmth rather than reaching for it. A thought moves slowly through your mind. Some historians continue to explore whether people in such environments developed a deeper awareness of their surroundings simply because there were fewer distractions competing for their attention. Sitting here, it feels true. There is nothing to pull your focus away. Everything you notice becomes more vivid. You blink slowly. Your eyes adjust to the shifting light, the dim corners of the room, no longer as obscure as they once seemed. You can make out the shapes more clearly now, not because they have changed, but because you have. You listen again. The fire, the breath, the faint settling of wood. Each sounds steady, predictable, yet never entirely the same. You begin to understand that the night here is not something that passes unnoticed. It is something you experience fully. Every sound, every movement, every quiet moment. And as you sit there wrapped in that careful awareness, you realize that even in stillness, the village is never truly silent. It is simply speaking more softly. You shift slightly, adjusting your posture near the fire, aware now of how small changes make a significant difference in comfort. Each movement is deliberate, measured against the cold that lingers beyond the hearth's reach. Your body has learned to respond without thought, curling slightly inward, while keeping your hands extended to catch every bit of warmth. You notice the layers of clothing you wear. They are simple, patched in places made of wool or linen, and each fold carries both warmth and restriction. The outer layers are thick, absorbing much of the chill, but your fingers and face remain exposed, teasing your awareness of the cold. In these small details, you begin to understand how people of this period adapted not just with fire, but with fabric layering and positioning to survive the long winter nights. A quirky tidbit that often goes unmentioned is that some peasants would wear multiple thin layers of clothing in a very specific order, not for style, but because they found that the air trapped between layers acted as a surprisingly effective insulator. You notice how instinctively your body begins to curl and shift, attempting to create similar pockets of warmth. The room seems smaller now, not because it has changed, but because your focus has deepened. Each person's movements, each sound, each subtle change in light from the fire draws your attention. You can almost feel the heat radiating from their bodies, a quiet shared warmth that blankets the space. It is as much about proximity as it is about the fire itself. You extend your hands again, letting the warmth seep back into your arms. The fire responds not intentionally, but as part of its own rhythm. The glow reaches outward in subtle waves, illuminating the rough textures of the walls, the straw scattered unevenly across the floor, and the simple objects arranged in careful necessity. You note how even the shadows seem alive, shifting slowly with the flicker of light revealing the contours of this shared space. Some scholars still debate whether these tightly packed arrangements in medieval homes were primarily for warmth or also for security, arguing that the close proximity allowed inhabitants to respond quickly to any threats from outside, be it wild animals or human intruders. Sitting here now, it is clear that both factors intertwine seamlessly. Survival relies equally on physical comfort and collective vigilance. You glance at the others, noting how each body seems to have its own method of preserving heat. One person curls tightly, drawing their knees toward their chest. Another sits upright, leaning closer to the fire, carefully balancing exposure to warmth without overextending. The interplay of posture, movement, and body heat is subtle, yet critical, almost like a silent choreography that has been perfected over countless nights. The cold persists outside, creeping slightly along the floorboards where the fire cannot reach. You feel its presence as a gentle, persistent reminder that comfort here is temporary, fleeting, and must be actively maintained. Every adjustment, every slight shift closer to the hearth, every shared body warmth counts. It is an endurance practiced in small, measured ways. A mainstream historical observation notes that peasants often relied on these combined strategies layered: clothing, fire, maintenance, and shared body heat to survive temperatures that modern insulation would render unimaginable. The scene before you is a living example, an intimate demonstration of necessity shaping behavior. You allow your gaze to wander along the walls, taking in the darkened timber, the faint smoky haze that clings to the beams, and the few essential items scattered around. Each object tells a quiet story of preparation and use, from the rough wooden stool to the bundle of spare cloth in the corner. The room is functional in every sense, every element working to support the delicate balance of warmth and survival. You settle your hands once more, the sensation of heat returning, gradually comforting enough to relax the tension in your shoulders. Outside, the cold night continues unabated, but inside this small room, life pulses quietly. Each breath, each flicker of fire, each subtle movement of the people around you reinforces a rhythm older than you can imagine, one that has persisted through countless winters. You lean slightly back, absorbing the warmth and the quiet order of the space. The interplay of cold fire, clothing, and proximity has begun to feel intuitive, as if your body has learned the rules without needing instruction. Every small adjustment contributes to endurance. Every subtle movement, every breath, every flicker of light matters. A quirky fact often overlooked is that some villagers would tuck small bundles of dried grass or leftover straw into their clothing to create extra insulation. A tactic that seems almost instinctive when you notice the subtle adjustments in posture and layering all around you. It is a reminder that survival is often about ingenuity in the smallest details. You exhale, slowly letting the warm air mingle with the faint smoke in the room. Time becomes difficult to measure here. The night stretches, measured only by the slow burning of the fire, the gradual exhaustion of your body, and the subtle, almost imperceptible movements of the people around you. You close your eyes, briefly listening. Every sound matters: the crackle of the fire, the occasional rustle of straw, the gentle rhythmic breathing of those sharing this space. You realize that in this environment, awareness is as essential as warmth. Neglect either, and discomfort follows swiftly. The balance of heat and cold sound and silence, motion and stillness feels almost meditative. You begin to sense the delicate order that governs these long winter nights, a pattern as natural as the cold air that presses gently at the edges of the room. And as you settle back, letting the warmth seep further into your body, you recognize that survival here is not dramatic, it is not urgent. It is continuous, quiet and deeply attentive. Every small detail contributes to life. Every careful motion sustains it, and every night follows this same enduring rhythm. You shift slightly on the straw, feeling the uneven surface beneath you, and notice how your body has grown accustomed to the confined space. It is not spacious here, and yet after a few hours it begins to feel familiar. You stretch your fingers toward the faint heat radiating from the hearth, letting the warmth flow slowly into your hands. Every part of your body seems to adjust instinctively, curling inward where the cold presses most strongly and leaning slightly forward where the fire reaches. Accounts from the period describe sleeping arrangements as communal, with entire families sharing a single room or even a single mattress-like area. The need to conserve warmth dictated how people position themselves. You realize now that even the simplest movement has purpose, and every shift in posture contributes to survival. Your eyes wander across the room. The low ceiling seems closer than it did when you first entered, but the familiarity of the shadows, the muted shapes of rough wooden furniture, and the glint of firelight on simple utensils makes the space feel anchored, almost protective. Each element has its place, and each element supports the delicate balance of heat, safety, and endurance. Interestingly, some villagers would arrange themselves according to the subtle hierarchies of warmth, with elders or the most vulnerable place closest to the hearth, while others adjusted further away. These positions were not dictated by formal rules, but by an unspoken understanding, a learned rhythm passed down through generations. You notice this subtle choreography now in the movements of those around you. Your attention turns to the faint sound of fabric shifting, Someone adjusts their blanket, a slow motion that releases a tiny creak as straw compresses beneath them. These quiet actions are magnified in this space, each sound carrying meaning. It is a reminder that in this environment the small details of movement, warmth, and placement are never trivial. You inhale, drawing in the mixture of fire smoke, damp wood, and the faint lingering aroma of the meal. The air is heavier here than outside, dense and layered with the history of countless nights endured in this very way. Your lungs adjust to it, and with each breath you feel more grounded within this room. Debates continue among scholars about whether the close proximity of sleeping arrangements contributed more to survival or more to the spread of illness. While proximity clearly conserved heat, it also facilitated the transmission of respiratory infections and other common winter ailments. You sense the subtle tension between comfort and risk as you observe the quiet habits of those near you. A faint, almost playful detail surfaces in your awareness. In some villages, small bundles of herbs were tucked beneath straw or pillows to provide warmth or to ward off pests. While it might seem eccentric, evidence suggests that people genuinely believed these practices offered subtle benefits. You imagine a sprig of lavender or rosemary hidden under a pillow, adding a faint aroma to the room and perhaps a small sense of reassurance. You shift again, noticing how the straw beneath you settles differently each time you move. Even the floor contributes to comfort or discomfort, responding subtly to weight and motion. Your hands brush against rough cloth layered for warmth, and you recognize how these simple materials, though coarse and uneven, make the cold tolerable. It is commonly observed that layering fabrics and combining body heat with fire was essential, particularly in spaces that were poorly insulated. The temperature difference from one corner of the room to another can be significant, and careful adjustment of position allows individuals to maintain a baseline of warmth throughout the night. You sense this balance instinctively, now moving slightly toward the center of the hearth's reach. You let yourself linger there, absorbing both warmth and the gentle, almost imperceptible veins of life in the room. Each breath, each subtle motion, and each flicker of firelight contributes to a rhythm that is entirely unique to these long winter nights. Your body begins to internalize that rhythm, learning it in a quiet, unspoken way. Contemporary studies indicate that such adaptation was crucial for survival. People developed remarkable attentiveness to their environment, noticing small changes in temperature, light, and sound that would go unnoticed in other contexts. You realize that you're beginning to experience that awareness yourself as your senses adjust to the subtle cues of warmth and movement. The room remains quiet yet alive. No words are spoken, no commands are given, yet every action has meaning, every adjustment contributes to comfort, and every breath reinforces the shared endurance of this space. You feel part of it now, not merely an observer, but a participant in the careful, steady choreography of survival. You close your eyes briefly, letting the warmth soak further into your skin, letting the rhythm of breathing, shifting and listening guide your thoughts. The cold outside seems more distant now and softened by the persistence of heat and shared presence within the room. Time becomes fluid, measured not in hours but in movements, breaths, and the gentle flicker of the fire. And as you settle further into this space, you begin to understand that sleeping arrangements here are far more than convenience. They are an essential component of life, a strategy born of necessity, and a subtle testament to human resilience in the face of relentless winter nights. You remain curled within your small space, letting the fire's warmth seep gradually into your limbs. Sleep seems near, though not complete. You notice the subtle tension in your body, easing your shoulders, dropping your fingers, relaxing as they absorb the residual heat. In this dim light, each shadow and shape takes on a slow, deliberate rhythm, the room moving with a quiet life of its own. Accounts from the period describe nighttime rest as often segmented rather than continuous. People would drift in and out of sleep, waking periodically to adjust themselves, tend the fire, or respond to small disturbances. You feel that pattern here in yourself, a slow oscillation between drowsiness and awareness, as though the night itself has a pulse that guides the body naturally. You shift slightly, noticing a faint chill where the fire's reach diminishes. The straw beneath you makes a soft settling sound as you adjust. Your body has learned over these hours how to distribute warmth efficiently, curling, leaning, pressing layers together, each adjustment purposeful, often unconscious. Interestingly, some villages had designated firekeepers who would wake periodically to ensure the embers remained alive, carefully redistributing logs or rekindling fading flames. Even in shared sleeping spaces, survival required this quiet vigilance. You can imagine this now as every small sound, the subtle shift of someone's blanket, or the faint snap of an ember, carries significance. You inhale slowly, the air heavy with smoke, the faint aroma of last night's stew lingering near the hearth. It is dense, almost tangible, settling into every crevice of the room, mixing with the warmth that clings to your body. There is a rhythm to breathing here that feels different than outside, deeper, more measured, almost synchronized with the faint, steady crackle of the fire. You glance towards the figure nearest you. They are curled tightly, knees drawn to chest, head resting lightly on the folded arms. Their movements are minimal, precise, conserving energy and warmth. There is an unspoken knowledge in their stillness, a skill developed through repeated winters each night, teaching subtle lessons in endurance. Debates continue among researchers about whether this segmented sleep pattern was primarily a response to environmental necessity or a cultural habit. Contemporary studies suggest both factors played a role, shaped by the limits of fire, the cold, and the communal nature of living spaces. Observing the room, now you can see why waking periodically would be both instinctive and practical. Your eyes drift to the hearth. The flames flicker gently, casting shadows that stretch and shrink with a delicate, almost hypnotic rhythm. You sense the careful attention required to maintain it through the night, every ember significant, every log strategically placed. The fire does not roar, but it endures, much like the people in the room. You shift again, drawing your knees closer. The motion releases a faint creak from the straw beneath you. It is soft, almost insignificant, yet in this environment such sounds are amplified, noticed, and accounted for. Even movement must be purposeful, and the smallest adjustment contributes to comfort and survival. Some sources note that the physical act of curling or huddling together was supplemented by shared warmth from others in the room. Bodies pressed close could conserve heat far more efficiently than relying solely on fire. You feel this now, the subtle transmission of warmth through proximity, a quiet, unspoken collaboration that sustains life during the coldest hours. A minor, almost amusing detail from historical accounts describes villagers adjusting their positions mid-sleep to avoid the discomfort of a neighbour's elbow or foot pressing too firmly. While it may seem trivial, these subtle negotiations were vital in maintaining comfort and preventing unnecessary movement that could chill the group. You sense the practice instinctively here, even in this brief moment of observation. The air remains thick but breathable. Every inhalation carries the combined scent of fire fabric and the faint tang of human presence. It is a smell that is both grounding and intimate, wrapping around you as surely as the warmth from the hearth. You feel it seeping into your awareness, creating a sense of connection to the space, to the people, and to the long night itself. You close your eyes for a moment, letting your mind drift without direction. Sleep teases you, coming in waves rather than a single uninterrupted stretch. You're aware of each awakening, each micro-adjustment of your body, each subtle sound that punctuates the quiet. It is a rhythm that has no need for clocks or measures, guided entirely by the environment, the fire, and the enduring practice of survival. Evidence suggests that these segmented periods of rest allowed people to tend to the fire, care for children or animals, and respond to unexpected disturbances while still maintaining the restorative aspects of sleep. You begin to experience this firsthand, each brief awakening, natural, unforced, and quietly purposeful. The room seems to breathe with you. Each shadow flickers, each ember shifts, each movement is gentle and measured. The cold outside presses against the walls, yet within warmth persists. Your body learns the dance between rest and awareness, understanding that survival is not passive but steady, attentive engagement with the night. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth from the fire and the surrounding bodies fill the spaces within you. Sleep will come in fragments at first, then in stretches long enough to sustain you through the next cold hours. And you realize that this pattern, both delicate and deliberate, has been repeated countless times over generations, a quiet testament to human adaptability and resilience. The night deepens, carrying with it a hushed, almost sacred stillness that seems to settle over every corner of the cottage. You remain curled near the hearth, feeling the warmth soak gradually into your body, a gentle reminder that even in the coldest winter hours, life continues in small measured ways. The faint crackle of the fire provides a subtle rhythm guiding your attention without demanding it, and your senses become attuned to every minor movement in the room. From somewhere near the corner, a soft sound emerges. Someone is shifting slightly, perhaps repositioning their body or adjusting a layer of straw or cloth. It is almost imperceptible, yet here it carries weight. You notice it immediately, your body reacting to it instinctively, a part of the environment now as much as an observer. Accounts from the period describe midnight activity as surprisingly routine. Villagers often woke during the long winter night to tend to fires, check on children or animals, or simply stretch to maintain warmth. The segmented nature of sleep was a necessary adaptation, not an inconvenience. You sense that pattern unfolding naturally around you. You reach your hands toward the warmth of the fire again, letting it touch your wrists and forearms. The sensation is comforting, but you are aware that the heat is localized. Your legs and back remain cooler, reminding you that survival depends on constant awareness and subtle movement. Even small adjustments in position make a significant difference. Interestingly, some families would quietly perform minor tasks at these hours, mending clothing, arranging firewood, or sorting food stores. These actions were not noisy or disruptive. They were almost ceremonial in their quiet, deliberate execution. You notice hints of this as subtle shifts, faint sounds of cloth brushing against straw, tiny creaks of wooden furniture movements that indicate care without intrusion. Your gaze returns to the figures around you. One person leans slightly, shifting closer to the fire, their body curling inward instinctively. Another breathes softly, barely moving yet radiating warmth through proximity. Each action is small, seemingly insignificant, yet cumulatively essential for maintaining the delicate equilibrium of comfort and survival in this space. Some researchers note that awareness of others' positions and habits during these long nights was crucial. Understanding who needed warmth most, who might stir, and how the room's collective heat moved could determine the difference between comfort and enduring the sting of cold. You begin to feel that awareness developing in yourself, subtle and unspoken. A faint gust of wind presses against the cottage walls. You feel it in the corners where the timber does not seal perfectly. Tiny drafts creep in, reminding you that the protection offered by the home is limited and must be augmented through shared warmth and careful positioning. You instinctively shift a little, curling further toward the hearth, preserving the heat captured by your body. Interestingly, some villages encourage the use of small animals indoors to supplement warmth. Chickens, cats, or even small dogs might be allowed near sleeping areas to add subtle heat. You notice faint movements at the edges of the room and imagine the possible presence of these creatures, a quiet living supplement to human ingenuity. Your eyes drift to the flickering shadows along the walls. The light from the fire dances over rough timber and uneven floor, revealing shapes that are both familiar and strange. You recognize every object, the bowls, the bundles of cloth, the simple tools, but the shadows give them a new, almost mysterious character. The room is alive in its quiet way, filled with a movement that is subtle. Subtle yet persistent. Evidence suggests that such nocturnal attentiveness helped villagers maintain order and efficiency throughout long winters. By waking periodically and observing small changes in the environment, people could prevent minor issues from escalating and preserve warmth for the group. You feel this principle in action, now observing everything with heightened sensitivity, noting the smallest shifts in sound and light. You inhale slowly, feeling the dense air around the hearth thickened with smoke and warmth. It is comforting, but also heavy, pressing gently against your lungs, reminding you that life here is a balance of elements, Heat, cold proximity and vigilance. The room seems to breathe alongside you. Each crackle, each shift, each soft exhalation of those nearby forms a subtle pattern, a rhythm that guides your own movements and awareness. Sleep approaches again fragmentary yet restorative, shaped by the continuous awareness that defines these long winter nights. You lean slightly toward the fire, allowing the warmth to reach further into your limbs. It is a slow, deliberate adjustment, not hurried or forced. You feel the presence of others as an unspoken support, their warmth reinforcing your own, a network of heat that stretches across the small room. Accounts from historical observers suggest that these shared rhythms developed over countless winters fostered both physical endurance and social cohesion. Close quarters, mutual attentiveness, and the continuous care of fire and food became a subtle form of communal resilience. You sense this here, the quiet collaboration that sustains life without words or ceremony. And as you settle more fully into this small circle of warmth, letting your body adjust, your mind relaxes. You understand that the night, while long and cold, is structured, predictable, and alive with its own gentle, persistent activity. Every shift, every breath, every faint sound contributes to the steady pulse of life that carries the village through winter. You shift slightly closer to the fire, feeling the embers' warmth brush against your legs, a comforting pulse that contrasts sharply with the persistent chill just beyond its reach. Each movement is careful, intentional, as if your body has learned the subtle balance between staying warm and conserving energy. The room has settled into a quiet rhythm where even the smallest sound, an adjustment of straw, the faint scrape of a hand against cloth, carries significance. Evidence from the period shows that maintaining a fire throughout the night was considered one of the most essential tasks in any household. A hearth left unattended could cool rapidly, forcing inhabitants to endure harsher cold or spend extra effort rekindling it, a process that was neither quick nor guaranteed. You feel this responsibility in the subtle attention paid to embers, the careful placement of logs, and the constant vigilance that pervades the room. Your hands hover just above the glow, catching the gentle heat. The warmth does not spread dramatically, but it is enough to ease stiffness in your fingers, shoulders, and forearms. You notice how instinctively your posture curls inward, creating small pockets where body heat can accumulate. This subtle choreography is mirrored by the others in the room, their movements minimal yet perfectly timed to conserve and share heat. A lesser-known observation is that some medieval families arranged sleeping positions according to perceived warmth needs, with elders, infants, or ill members positioned closest to the fire and able-bodied individuals slightly farther away. Watching the subtle adjustments here, you sense a quiet negotiation of space and warmth that occurs without words or overt direction. You glance around, taking in the firelight dancing across rough timber beams and the faint haze of smoke hanging near the ceiling. Each shadow stretches and contracts, moving with the flicker, as though the room itself breathes alongside its inhabitants. The interplay of light and dark is subtle but meaningful, shaping your perception of a depth, space, and the presence of those around you. Contemporary research suggests that such attentiveness to small environmental cues, temperature, airflow, and light was critical for surviving long, harsh winters. You notice it in yourself now, a heightened awareness of the faintest changes, a drift of smoke, the shift of a blanket, the movement of a hand adjusting a log in the fire. All these details become part of the rhythm that governs life within the room. You extend your hands again towards the hearth, allowing the warmth to settle into your palms. The contrast with the cooler air around you sharpens your focus. Every inhalation carries not only the scent of smoke and straw, but also the subtle tang of damp fabric, a reminder that the environment is alive with layered textures. Even the faint residue of the day's meal lingers in the air, grounding the senses in a reality that is physical, immediate, and intimate. Accounts indicate that these quiet, attentive practices were passed down through generations, taught not through instruction but through observation and repetition. You notice yourself imitating these habits unconsciously, curling slightly inward, shifting toward the center of warmth, adjusting clothing layers and remaining alert to subtle changes in the room. It is a form of learning that operates beneath conscious thought embedded in bodily memory. A playful detail surfaces as you observe the careful positioning of everyone in the room. Some families reportedly tucked extra straw or small bundles of cloth under their clothing to create insulation. It might seem quaint, even amusing, but such small adaptations were meaningful, demonstrating ingenuity born of necessity. You sense echoes of this habit here, subtle adjustments in posture that hint at strategies passed down through countless winters. You lean back slightly, letting the warmth fill the front of your body while the back remains cool. Each breath, each minor movement feels deliberate. You begin to understand that life in this space is not passive. Survival requires ongoing, attentive interaction with the environment. Every ember tended, every blanket shifted, every posture adjusted contributes to the quiet equilibrium that allows the night to pass without incident. Debate persists among historians regarding the extent to which these nightly routines shaped communal bonds. Some argue that shared vigilance and coordinated care strengthened relationships, while others suggest that it was merely a matter of necessity, practical survival dictating social interaction. Sitting here now, observing the interplay of warmth, space, and attention, it feels likely that both perspectives hold truth. You exhale slowly, absorbing the rhythmic crackle of the fire, the faint shuffle of straw beneath restless limbs, and the almost imperceptible creaks of the timber around you. The room feels alive without movement, sustained by shared presence, subtle adjustments, and the unspoken knowledge that each night demands both patience and care. And as you settle into the warmth, allowing your body to align with the quiet pulse of the hearth and the room, you realize that the night is not simply something to endure. It is an ongoing practice, a lived experience shaped by awareness, shared presence, and a delicate balance of heat and stillness. You feel the cold seeping in along the edges of the room, particularly where the timber walls meet the floor. The warmth from the hearth reaches only so far, and your body instinctively adjusts, curling slightly inward and shifting your weight toward the center. Every inch matters here, and each minor movement is part of a careful negotiation between comfort and endurance. Evidence from the period shows that insulation in most medieval homes was minimal at best. Straw, mud, or rough cloth provided some protection, but the temperature difference from one corner of a room to another could be considerable. You sense this now, noting the subtle chill creeping along your back and shoulders despite your proximity to the fire. You glance around the room, observing how others have positioned themselves. Each person's posture is different, reflecting personal strategies for retaining heat. Some curl tightly, others remain slightly more upright, leaning toward the fire. There is an unspoken coordination in these positions, a shared understanding of how best to survive the long night. Accounts indicate that this kind of spatial awareness was essential. People learned over years which areas of a room held the most warmth, which positions allowed for maximum comfort, and how to adjust quickly if conditions changed. Your own body now seems to follow the same instincts, moving subtly to maintain equilibrium with the environment. A curious observation is that some villagers would use small animals as living heaters. Cats, dogs, or even chickens might be permitted to roost nearby, adding a small but tangible layer of warmth. You imagine the subtle movement of a cat curling at someone's feet, its small body radiating heat that could make the difference in comfort over several hours. You extend your hands toward the fire, letting the warmth sink into your fingertips and wrists. Even this small contact feels crucial. It is enough to make a difference in perception, enough to remind you that your body can respond to warmth however limited. Each minor adjustment in posture or hand placement contributes to the cumulative comfort of the room. Debate continues among researchers regarding whether the combination of body heat and fire-generated warmth was sufficient to prevent illness or simply mitigated discomfort. The evidence is mixed, but observing the careful habits in the room, now it is clear that these strategies were practiced consciously and continuously, even if people could not articulate their reasoning scientifically. You take a slow breath, inhaling the dense mixture of smoke, straw, and the faint lingering aroma of the evening meal. The air feels heavy, almost tactile, settling around your lungs in a way that is different from the brisk cold outside. Each exhale mingles with it, a small reminder of your presence in the space part of the shared environment. Interestingly, historical notes mention that people sometimes shifted positions multiple times during the night to avoid discomfort, distribute warmth, or adjust to minor drafts. You feel this instinct emerge within yourself now, making subtle movements without conscious thought. The practice is quiet, efficient, and remarkably effective. You observe the fire again. The embers glow steadily, each flicker reflected in the eyes of those nearby. The room seems to respond to the hearth in a coordinated way. Shadows lengthen and shrink. The warmth radiates unevenly but predictably, and the patterns of light and heat create a subtle rhythm that guides movement and posture. Contemporary research suggests that this attentiveness to the environment combined with habitual minor adjustments allowed people to maintain a baseline level of comfort even in harsh conditions. The room itself seems to operate like a living organism, its small changes acknowledged and adapted to by every individual within it. You feel your body relaxing further, aligning with the rhythm of warmth, sound, and subtle motion. Each breath is slower, more measured. Every slight shift in position conserves energy and heat. The cold outside remains, but it no longer dominates your awareness. The room and its inhabitants create a shared microclimate sustained by vigilance and learned practices. As you settle back, fully letting the warmth fill your chest and fingers, you sense the deliberate continuity of these long nights. There is no sudden climax or dramatic change, only the steady, attentive endurance that defines life during winter in this place. You realize that the night is not merely endured, but experienced fully shaped by quiet observation, shared warmth, and the subtle rhythms of human presence. You feel sleep begin to tug gently at your eyelids, though it comes in fragments rather than a single stretch. Your body remains curled near the fire muscles, loosening, as the warmth penetrates slowly into each limb. The room around you holds its quiet order, every small movement of those nearby, absorbed into a rhythm that feels both deliberate and natural. Records from the time describe how medieval villagers often experienced segmented sleep. People would drift into slumber, awaken briefly to adjust themselves or tend the fire, and then fall back into rest. It was a pattern shaped by necessity rather than habit, a way to survive long winter nights when cold and darkness dominated. You can feel that pattern forming within yourself now, a gentle oscillation between rest and wakefulness. Your hands hover above the glowing embers, catching the subtle heat that radiates outward. The warmth does not travel far, but it is enough to ease stiffness and create a small vital comfort. Your body instinctively moves to maximize it, curling slightly closer or leaning forward to capture the hearth's reach. You notice the same careful attention in the postures of those around you. Each adjustment conserves energy and preserves warmth. A lesser-known observation is that some villagers would use small parcels of straw or cloth tucked into clothing or bedding to create added insulation. You imagine these tiny bundles hidden beneath layers, adding incremental heat that might not be obvious, but contributes to survival over the long night. You sense echoes of this practice in the subtle adjustments of posture and layering in the room. You take a slow, measured breath, inhaling the mixture of fire smoke, straw, and faint residual aroma of the meal. The air is dense and slightly heavy, settling into your lungs and giving the space a tangible presence. Each exhalation blends with the warmth, creating a quiet cycle of breathing that mirrors the ebb and flow of the firelight. Contemporary studies indicate that awareness of the environment, temperature fluctuations, small drafts, and subtle sounds was a crucial survival skill. You feel this awareness now, noticing the faint creak of the timber overhead, the subtle shift of someone moving beneath a layer of straw, and the occasional pop of a small ember. These details, though minor, form a continuous background that shapes your perception of the night. You glance at the figures near the fire. One shifts slightly, drawing a blanket closer, while another adjusts a log in the embers with a slow practice motion. These actions are almost imperceptible, yet they contribute to the shared microclimate of the room. Every movement is meaningful, reinforcing the delicate balance between warmth, comfort, and alertness. Interestingly, some historical accounts describe villagers using layered clothing and body positioning to create warmth. Corridors, strategic arrangements that maximized heat retention within limited spaces. Watching these subtle habits in action, you understand how essential such knowledge was passed down without explicit instruction, absorbed through observation and repetition. You allow your gaze to rest on the fire. The flames move gently, their reflection casting shifting shadows on rough walls. The light is steady yet variable, forming patterns that provide a subconscious sense of orientation and safety. You feel your mind responding to these cues, adjusting with each flicker, each changing glow. Accounts suggest that the combination of fire-shared body heat and careful movement allowed people to endure long nights without becoming dangerously chilled. The strategies were as much about coordination and awareness as about physical warmth. Sitting here, you feel that principle in action. Each motion, each posture, each shift in position is part of a quiet dance of survival, subtle but effective. You exhale slowly again, feeling the heat from the fire and the warmth of nearby bodies spread gently through your chest and arms. Sleep draws closer, but it is patient. The segmented rhythm of the night continues, a soft pulse that guides your senses, awareness and breathing. And as you let yourself sink further into this small circle of warmth, you realize that enduring the night is not simply a matter of physical survival. It is a practice, a quiet attentiveness, a harmony between the body, the environment, and the shared presence of those around you. The cold outside is sharp, persistent, and real, but here within this circle, life persists slow and steady, measured in ember's breath and subtle motion. You stir slightly, the warmth from the fire brushing against your arms and shoulders, a steady presence amid the persistent chill. Your body has begun to anticipate the heat, curling and adjusting subtly to capture what little reaches your hands and legs. Even small shifts make a notable difference, and you find yourself unconsciously aligning with the rhythms of the room and the fire. It's well documented that medieval villagers relied heavily on shared warmth within households to survive winter nights. The combination of body heat, layered clothing, and proximity to the hearth created a microclimate that made long cold nights bearable. You feel that principle in action now as each movement and position contributes to sustaining comfort for everyone present. Your attention drifts to the faint crackle and pop of the embers. Each sound is amplified in the quiet, drawing your awareness like a subtle heartbeat. Observations from contemporary sources note that these minor variations were significant cues alerting inhabitants to shifts in the fire's intensity, the need for more fuel, or even changes in airflow that might affect the room's temperature. You find yourself attuned to these details, interpreting the subtlest changes without conscious effort. A lesser-known practice involved placing small stones near the fire to radiate heat long after the flames dimmed. The warmth stored in these stones would gradually release during the night, providing an extra layer of comfort for those sleeping nearby. You imagine how such strategies would have been invaluable, especially when the outside cold is relentless, creeping along the walls and floor. Your gaze drifts to the other occupants of the room. Each body seems to have developed its own pattern of conserving warmth. Some curl, tightly tucking extremities inward, while others remain slightly upright, leaning toward the hearth for more direct heat. The coordination is unspoken but precise, a learned practice honed through countless nights and generations. Debate continues regarding the influence of these practices on social cohesion. Some researchers suggest that the necessity of shared vigilance and coordination during long nights had strengthened interpersonal bonds, fostering subtle hierarchies and unspoken agreements. Others argue that it was purely pragmatic and instinctive response to environmental conditions. Sitting here, you can see evidence of both efficiency intertwined with silent collaboration. You take a slow breath, inhaling the dense mixture of smoke, straw, and residual aromas from the evening meal. The air is thick, yet it carries a certain intimacy. Every inhalation draws you further into the shared experience of the room, reinforcing the quiet connections between body's heat and attention. Historical records describe periods of quiet labour during the night, often undertaken to maintain warmth or prepare for the day ahead. Simple tasks like rearranging straw bedding, tending the embers, or folding cloth could occupy brief awakenings. You notice subtle movements that suggest similar practices. Here, a hand adjusting a bundle of straw, a body shifting slightly to conserve heat, the smallest tasks done almost unconsciously. Evidence suggests that these adaptations were crucial for minimizing exposure to the cold and for maintaining energy over prolonged nights. Your body seems to understand this, implicitly responding to subtle temperature gradients and movement cues with minimal effort. You shift slightly toward the fire, your posture balancing both warmth and readiness. The room is alive in quiet ways. The flicker of the flames, the faint stirrings of straw, the subtle breathing patterns of those nearby, all combine into a rhythm that governs this space. You notice how attuned your senses have become, each sound movement and breath is meaningful, each contributing to the fragile balance that sustains comfort. A playful detail noted in historical sources describes how some villagers would arrange themselves to optimize warmth during midwinter nights, adjusting positions not just for heat, but to prevent the intrusion of drafts or avoid disturbing neighbors. These small adjustments, though, unremarkable in isolation, collectively enhanced endurance and maintained calm in the room. You feel that practice subtly influencing your own posture and awareness. As you settle further into the warmth, letting your body relax and adjust, you recognize that enduring this night is a practice of continuous attention. Every small action, every careful observation, and every movement plays a part in the quiet choreography of survival. The cold outside is real and persistent, yet within these walls life persists, slow, deliberate, and resilient. You allow yourself to lean back slightly, feeling the warmth of the fire deepen across your torso. The room seems to settle around you, each shadow and flicker of light moving in a subtle rhythm that your senses now follow almost automatically. Even in stillness, the space feels alive, shaped by the interplay of heat, human presence, and the gentle crackle of embers. Accounts from the period indicate that long winter nights were often punctuated by quiet, reflective activity. Villagers would sometimes sit awake for periods tending fires, checking on children, or quietly mending clothes. These routines were not imposed but absorbed through observation and necessity, creating a natural rhythm that guided the night. You feel this rhythm now, attuning your body and mind to the small ongoing motions that sustain life. Your gaze travels across the room, taking in the simple furnishings, a bundle of straw in one corner, folded cloth in another, a small wooden stool near the wall. Each object has its purpose and contributes to the fragile equilibrium of comfort. Nothing is decorative. Everything exists to support survival. Interestingly, some families employed small strategies to conserve warmth during these long nights, such as placing heated stones near sleeping areas or layering additional straw beneath bedding. These subtle techniques were widely known within communities passed down without instruction. You imagine the warmth radiating from these small sources, augmenting the hearth's heat, and understand why even minor adjustments in posture could make a significant difference. You shift your hands slightly, letting them hover just above the fire's edge. The warmth licks your palms gently while your arms and shoulders remain cooler, reminding you that comfort is never complete. Each movement, each adjustment carries purpose, curling inward, leaning forward, positioning layers of clothing strategically. You're learning the unspoken rules of endurance. Debate persists regarding whether the habitual wakefulness during these nights was a purely practical adaptation, or whether it also influenced cognitive and social patterns over time. Some researchers suggest that segmented rest may have fostered heightened awareness, or attentiveness, and subtle forms of social coordination, while others argue that it was entirely a matter of environmental necessity. Observing the room, you see evidence of both vigilance combined with learned social cues. A lesser-known practice involved allowing small household animals to remain close during sleep. Cats or small dogs added warmth and sometimes comfort, moving quietly around the straw and bedding. You imagine the faint rustle of a cat curling near someone's legs, its body heat contributing to the room's shared warmth. Even tiny adjustments like a small paw shifting could influence posture or position, enhancing the overall balance of heat. You breathe slowly, inhaling the mixed scents of smoke straw and lingering meal aromas. The air is thick but grounding, creating a sensory map that informs each small movement. Every creak of timber shift of cloth or pop of an ember is interpreted by your body as a guide to survival subtle signals that influence posture, attention, and even the micro movements of your breathing. Evidence suggests that repeated exposure to these conditions honed an almost instinctive awareness of environmental cues. People learn to sense the tiniest fluctuations in temperature, subtle drafts and shifts in fire intensity, responding without conscious calculation. You notice this awareness emerging in yourself, each movement intuitive, each adjustment purposeful. Your gaze returns to the fire. The flames move gently, throwing dancing reflections across the timber beams. Shadows lengthen and contract, a quiet visual rhythm that mirrors the subtle pulse of breath and body heat throughout the room. You recognize the fire as both a source of physical warmth and a marker of temporal flow guiding the night's progression. Historical records describe minor night tasks such as tending embers, moving straw, or folding cloth as vital to comfort and survival. These movements were deliberate and nearly silent, each contributing to the collective endurance of the household. You notice small coordinated motions around you, a hand reaching to adjust a log, a slight shift of a blanket, an almost imperceptible curling of limbs to preserve warmth. A playful observation from historical notes mentions that some families would strategically arrange sleeping positions to optimize both heat and social harmony, avoiding friction or accidental nudges that might disrupt sleep. These small, thoughtful arrangements reflect a deep unspoken knowledge of human behavior and environmental management, a skill honed through necessity. You lean back, fully letting the warmth reach your chest and shoulders. The room's rhythm feels natural now, your body synchronized with subtle movement, quiet vigilance, and the flickering firelight. The night is neither passive nor threatening. It is a lived, continuous experience, a delicate balance of attention, care, and endurance. You sink slightly deeper into your position, feeling the fire's warmth radiate into your chest and hands. The room around you has settled into a gentle, enduring quiet, punctuated only by the subtle sounds of movement and the soft pop of embers. Each sound seems significant, every flicker of light a signal that the night is alive, moving slowly in its own rhythm. Accounts from the period indicate that superstitions and folk beliefs often shaped behavior during long winter nights. People were attentive not only to the fire and temperature, but also to subtle signs, omens, or rituals meant to protect against misfortune. You sense the lingering influence of these traditions in the careful, deliberate movements of those around you, as though habits of safety and reassurance are woven into the very rhythm of life. You glance at the room again. Each figure maintains a posture that balances warmth and alertness. Some lie curled tightly, others sit upright, leaning just enough toward the fire to absorb heat while remaining ready to respond to any disturbance. The balance of attention and comfort is subtle but precise, a silent choreography perfected over many seasons. Evidence suggests that these careful arrangements were critical in maintaining health and morale through the long, dark hours of winter. Even small adjustments in clothing posture or proximity to the hearth could preserve warmth, reduce fatigue, and prevent illness. You notice your own body responding to these environmental cues, instinctively curling and stretching with a quiet efficiency. A lesser-known observation involves the role of storytelling and quiet communication during these hours. Even if conversation was minimal, whispered tales, recollections, or subtle remarks often travelled across rooms, offering entertainment, instruction, or reassurance. You imagine a soft voice recounting a familiar story, its cadence weaving into the background of crackling fire and shifting straw. You take a slow breath, inhaling the dense mixture of smoke, straw, and lingering aromas from the evening meal. Each inhalation fills your lungs with the texture of the space, creating a connection between body and environment. Every exhale allows you to release tension, syncing subtly with the rhythm of the fire. Observations from contemporary sources note that these micro-practices, careful breathing, attentive observation and minimal movement helped villagers conserve energy and maintain alertness during long nights. Your body seems to have internalized this principle. Each motion minimal, each breath deliberate. You shift slightly, repositioning your hands closer to the hearth. The warmth reaches far further now, easing the chill along your fingers and wrists. Every small adjustment improves your comfort, yet it requires constant attention. In this environment, comfort is temporary, contingent upon careful management of position, posture, and attention. Debate continues regarding whether segmented sleep and these micro-adjustments were primarily a survival mechanism or also influenced cognitive and social development. Some researchers suggest that heightened awareness of environmental cues fostered sharper observational skills and social coordination. Others argue that these behaviors were purely functional responses to the limits of warmth and light. Observing the quiet coordination around you, it seems likely that both factors are intertwined. Your eyes drift to the ceiling and walls. Shadows dance subtly in response to the firelight, creating a pattern that is both predictable and variable. You realize that your attention to these visual cues enhances your sense of spatial awareness, informing where to place your body for optimal warmth and minimal exposure to drafts. A quirky detail from historical accounts mentions that small household charms or tokens were sometimes tucked near the fire or under straw to ward off perceived threats or bad luck. These items, though not physically functional in generating warmth, provided psychological reassurance, a subtle layer of security during long, uncertain nights. You imagine these hidden objects now adding a quiet dimension to the room's atmosphere. You exhale, letting your body relax into the warmth, aligning with the rhythm of breath, fire, and subtle movement around you. The night stretches on slow and continuous, guided by attentiveness, care, and the shared understanding that survival depends on both observation and cooperation. You feel yourself settling further, attuned to the room, the fire, and the fragile balance of warmth and presence that defines these long medieval nights. It is not a passive experience. It is living deliberately within the constraints of cold and darkness, with each small action contributing to the continuity of life. You feel the weight of the night pressing gently against the walls, a constant reminder that winter stretches far beyond what the eye can see. The room remains warm near the fire, but the edges are cooler, and your body instinctively adjusts, curling slightly and shifting closer to others to conserve heat. Each small movement has purpose, and unspoken strategy learned from observation and repeated experience. Contemporary accounts reveal that illness was a constant concern during winter months. The combination of close quarters, stale air, and limited nutrition made villagers vulnerable to colds, respiratory infections, and other ailments. You notice the careful habits around you, subtle shifts in position, the gentle covering of mouths or noses, even small gestures that reduce exposure to chill or shared germs. These minor adjustments reflect a deep intuitive understanding of risk. You glance at the other occupants of the room. One stretches slightly, adjusting a bundle of straw to provide insulation, while another shifts closer to the fire. Each action is deliberate, conserving energy and warmth while maintaining personal space. There is a quiet coordination here, almost a choreography of survival, each movement reinforcing the collective comfort. A subtle custom involved keeping small bundles of herbs within reach. These were believed to help purify the air, provide warmth, or even ward off minor illness. You imagine the faint fragrance of lavender or rosemary, mingling with sunken straw, adding a sensory layer that is as practical as it is reassuring. Such small practices demonstrate ingenuity in the face of relentless winter conditions. You take a slow breath, inhaling the thick, layered air of smoke, straw, and lingering meal aromas. The density of the room is grounding. Each inhalation brings a sense of shared presence and intimate awareness of those around you and the environment itself. Every exhale releases tension, aligning your body with the rhythm of the fire and the quiet movements in the room. Evidence from historical records suggests that segmented sleep patterns allowed villagers to maintain vigilance, tend fires, and care for children or animals during long nights. You notice the subtle wakefulness in the room, a small stir here, a gentle shift there. These micro-awakenings are not disruptive but functional, forming part of a larger, carefully managed rhythm of survival. You adjust slightly, curling further into yourself and letting the fire's warmth reach your chest. Each repositioning balances exposure to heat with the need to conserve energy. Even the smallest gestures, the careful folding of a blanket, the adjustment of a hand, make a measurable difference. Research indicates ongoing discussion about whether these routines primarily shape survival skills or also influence social and cognitive patterns. In this room, both seem evident. The occupants demonstrate attentiveness to their environment and to one another, a silent collaboration that preserves warmth, safety, and comfort. You exhale again, letting the warmth radiate gently across your body. The firelight flickers, casting moving shadows that give the room a sense of motion despite the stillness of the night. You recognize that light and shadow, heat and cold, movement and stillness all interact in subtle ways, guiding attention, posture, and awareness. A lesser-known observation notes that people sometimes use strategic breathing and posture to regulate body heat while sleeping or resting. You feel your own breath slow in response, chest rising and falling, in time with the quiet shifts around you. Each inhale draws warmth, in each exhale releases tension, creating a delicate balance between rest and vigilance. Your eyes drift to the ceiling and walls, the timber above and around you darkened by smoke, and time seems to enclose the space in a gentle embrace, providing shelter and stability. Even as the cold presses at the edges, the room functions as a microcosm of survival, heat, attention, and careful adaptation working together. Accounts indicate that nights like these shaped daily life, creating habits of attentiveness, patience, and collaboration that extended beyond winter months. The balance of warmth, observation, and social cooperation formed patterns repeated over generations. You feel part of that continuity now, a participant in a living tradition of endurance. You settle further into the warmth, feeling the room's subtle rhythms guide your body. The cold outside is persistent, but here, within the careful balance of fire bodies and attentive movement, life continues steadily. Sleep will come in intervals, guided by instinct, necessity, and the quiet choreography of the night. You sense the weight of the night shifting subtly as your body adjusts to the combined warmth of the fire and the people around you. Every minor movement, every slight repositioning seems to be guided by instinct now. Your fingers curl inward slightly, your shoulders relax, and your legs find a posture that preserves as much heat as possible. The room hums quietly with life, small, almost imperceptible, but present in every breath and subtle sound. Evidence from historical records suggests that maintaining warmth during long winter nights relied as much on careful body positioning as on firewood. Layering, curling, and proximity to others were not just comfort strategies, but essential survival techniques. You notice how each person seems to instinctively manage their body's exposure, leaning into warmth, curling tightly or adjusting straw to maximize insulation. Each movement is deliberate and functional, a reflection of habits honed over generations. You exhale, slowly drawing in the dense air of smoke, straw, and lingering meal aromas. The scent is grounding, carrying the weight of the room's shared experience. You notice the subtle layering of smells, smoke from the hearth, the earthy tang of straw bedding, the faint aroma of dried herbs tucked near bedding or clothing. These sensory details combine to reinforce a sense of place, time, and collective survival. Accounts from the period indicate that vigilance during the night extended beyond fire maintenance. People would occasionally wake to check on children and animals, or rearrange bedding to preserve warmth. You notice similar small movements here, the gentle shift of someone adjusting a blanket, a slight repositioning of limbs, a hand nudging a log closer to the embers. These actions are quiet but essential, a delicate balance between attention and rest. A lesser-known practice involved positioning small stones or heated clay near sleeping areas to radiate warmth slowly through the night. These subtle strategies illustrate the ingenuity villagers employed to extend comfort without wasting precious fuel. You imagine how such methods complemented the fire and body heat, creating a carefully managed environment optimized for survival. You glance around the room. Shadows flicker across the walls, shifting with the firelight. Each figure's posture is slightly different, a personal adaptation to heat comfort and alertness. One person leans lightly into the warmth, another curls inward arms, hugging knees. Even in stillness, these arrangements create an invisible map of efficiency and adaptation. Research indicates ongoing discussion about whether segmented sleep and attentiveness to small environmental cues influenced cognitive and social development. In this room, the evidence is visible. The occupants coordinate instinctively, balancing warmth, comfort, and vigilance, demonstrating both practical and social adaptations to the harsh conditions of winter nights. You take a slow, measured breath, letting the warmth seep deeper into your chest and arms. The fire flickers in response to subtle drafts, while the room's occupants adjust imperceptibly, maintaining equilibrium. Every minor action is part of a network of survival reinforcing warmth and presence without words or ceremony. Interestingly, historical writings describe how even the smallest habitual adjustments, shifting a blanket, curling fingers, repositioning a leg, could substantially affect comfort and reduce the risk of exposure. You notice yourself mirroring these motions unconsciously, fine-tuning posture and alignment in response to the room and fire. The ambient sounds of the night continue, the gentle crackle of embers, the faint rustle of straw, the subtle breath of those nearby. Each noise carries meaning in this quiet environment, signaling minor movements, adjustments, and the presence of life. You realize that hearing like movement is a tool for survival as much as warmth or shelter. Observations from the time suggest that attentiveness to these subtle environmental cues became second nature over years of experience. Your own senses now track changes in heat, light, and sound, guiding micro-adjustments in position and posture that conserve warmth and energy, sustaining life throughout the night. You settle slightly closer to the hearth, letting the fire's glow reach your chest and shoulders. Each breath and minor movement aligns with the rhythms of the room, the fire, and the presence of others. The night is not simply endured. It is navigated with care, awareness, and shared adaptation. You exhale fully, feeling the gentle pull of sleep as your body synchronizes with the slow, continuous rhythms around you. In this space, comfort, awareness, and cooperation combine to create an environment that allows survival in a way that is quiet, unspoken, and enduring. The cold outside is persistent, but here life continues, steadily measured in embers, breath, and subtle human motion. You turn your attention to the faint flicker of candlelight near the far wall, noticing how it complements the fire without competing. The soft glow illuminates small corners of the room, casting subtle shadows across straw cloth and rough timber. Even minimal light here carries significance, allowing for observation and minor tasks, while maintaining the calm and stillness necessary for sleep. Evidence from historical records suggests that candles were costly and often reserved for critical tasks or brief illumination. Most medieval villagers relied primarily on the hearth for both heat and light. The interplay of firelight and shadow created a natural rhythm that guided movement and activity during the long hours of darkness. You notice how every adjustment into posture or hand position is influenced by the subtle patterns of illumination around you. You glance at the figures near the hearth. One leans slightly forward, reaching to nudge a small ember, while another adjusts a bundle of cloth to retain warmth. Each action is quiet, deliberate part of the ongoing maintenance of comfort and safety. Observations from the time indicate that such micro-movements were essential, conserving energy, while ensuring heat and awareness were sustained. You find yourself observing these motions closely, learning their unspoken logic. A subtle custom involved arranging small items around the room to reflect light or enhance warmth. Shiny surfaces, polished wood, or even reflective metal objects could help spread the fire's glow, creating small zones of illumination or heat. You notice how each object's placement seems intentional, adding efficiency and comfort without excess. You inhale slowly, drawing in the dense mix of smoke straw and faint traces of herbs or food. The air is thick but grounding, connecting you to the space and the people within it. Each exhale releases tension, allowing you to adjust unconsciously to the subtle shifts in temperature, airflow, and activity around you. Some sources note that the presence of even a small light source like a candle allowed villagers to perform quiet tasks during the night, such as folding cloth, checking supplies, or tending embers. These minor activities, while subtle, contributed to maintaining warmth and readiness, reducing disruptions in the shared rhythm of sleep and vigilance. You shift slightly, leaning closer to the hearth, letting the glow reach your chest. The warmth deepens, flowing through your body gradually. Your senses are increasingly attuned to small variations, the movement of air, the faint crackle of embers, the subtle rustle of straw beneath another person's hand. Every detail informs your position and posture, each action a contribution to your own comfort and the shared endurance of the room. Debate persists among historians regarding how much these environmental adaptations influenced cognitive skills or social coordination. Some argue that constant awareness of subtle changes in heat, sound, and light honed attention and responsiveness. Others suggest that these behaviors were purely functional, driven by necessity rather than shaping thought or social structure. Observing the room, it seems likely that both interpretations hold merit. You notice the slight movement of shadows along the wall as the fire and candlelight flicker. These visual cues are almost imperceptible but provide a sense of spatial awareness guiding posture and attention. Shift, however subtle, informs decisions about where to place hands, feet, or head for optimal warmth and comfort. A lesser-known practice involved using small insulated cloth bundles placed near extremities to maintain heat during sleep. Even minor adjustments of clothing or bedding, observed frequently in historical records, could significantly impact overall warmth. You feel yourself instinctively adopting similar strategies, curling slightly, adjusting your layers, and leaning toward the warmth around you. You exhale fully, letting your body relax further into the shared microclimate of the room. The night continues slow and deliberate, shaped by attention, warmth, and subtle collaboration. Each small motion, each flicker of light, each micro-adjustment reinforces the ongoing rhythm that sustains comfort, presence, and survival. And as you settle further, you realize that even something as simple as light and minor movement can shape the quality of endurance during these long winter nights. The room, the fire, and the careful attention of its occupants combine to create a living environment where survival is practiced gently, deliberately, and continuously. You begin to notice how the closeness of the room shapes interaction even in stillness. Each body radiates a small amount of warmth, and the way people are positioned affects the overall comfort of everyone present. There is a subtle, unspoken coordination that guides movement and posture, as if the room itself operates with a quiet intelligence. Records from the era indicate that shared sleeping and living spaces were essential in conserving heat, particularly during the coldest nights of winter. People learned instinctively how to arrange themselves, balancing personal comfort with the collective warmth of the household. You sense this arrangement unfolding naturally around you, each minor shift contributing to the overall equilibrium. You shift slightly, curling inward and adjusting as a blanket around your shoulders. The warmth from the fire radiates unevenly, and the presence of others nearby enhances the effect. Contemporary sources suggest that proximity to others combined with careful layering and attention to posture was a critical factor in surviving prolonged exposure to cold temperatures. You feel that principle in action, now your body responding almost instinctively to the subtle cues of warmth and position. A lesser-known practice involved using simple, often improvised barriers to manage drafts. Stray pieces of cloth, bundles of straw, or even carefully positioned objects could reduce air flow and help maintain heat in critical areas. You notice these small adjustments here, subtle but effective, demonstrating an acute awareness of environmental dynamics. You inhale, slowly drawing in the dense layered air of smoke straw and lingering aromas from the evening meal. Each breath is grounding, connecting you to the space and to those who share it. Every exhalation releases tension, allowing you to synchronize your movements and posture with the rhythms of the fire in the room. Debates among historians continue regarding the degree to which these nightly routines influence social cohesion. Some argue that the constant need for coordination fostered cooperation and understanding, while others contend that practical necessity alone drove these behaviors. Observing the subtle patterns in this room, it seems likely that both elements are at work, survival reinforced by collaboration and collaboration reinforced by survival. You glance at the fire again. Its flames flicker and pulse, casting moving shadows across the rough timber walls. The interplay of light and shadow informs spatial awareness, subtly guiding posture, hand placement, and even the direction of attention. Observations from the time indicate that these visual cues, though minor, were integral to maintaining comfort and avoiding unnecessary movement. You notice the small, almost imperceptible adjustments of the people around you. A slight shift of a hand, a gentle curling of a knee, a repositioning of a blanket. Each micro-movement serves a purpose to conserve warmth, maintain through comfort, and sustain the collective endurance of the room. You realize that survival in this environment is an ongoing attentive practice rather than a passive state. Evidence shows that awareness of these subtle environmental and social cues allowed villagers to conserve energy, maintain vigilance, and respond to cold efficiently. Your own body now mirrors this attentiveness, adjusting with minimal conscious effort, guided by instinct and observation. A curious detail noted in some historical records mentions that minor tactile interactions, such as brushing hands against shared fabric or repositioning straw, could create small but significant changes in comfort. These subtle practices, repeated over generations, contributed to endurance and resilience, and you sense them operating here naturally. You exhale once more, feeling the warmth from the fire and from shared body heat spread through your chest and arms. The room's quiet rhythm, composed of movement, breath, and light, becomes almost meditative. You recognize that enduring the night is not only about resisting cold, but also about synchronizing with the environment, with the people around you, and with the subtle patterns of the hearth and room. You lean slightly toward the fire, letting its glow touch your shoulders and face, and each breath, each minor adjustment, and each flicker of light contributes to a continuous quiet network of comfort and survival. The cold outside is persistent, but within this carefully balanced space, life continues, steadily guided by observation, attention, and gentle coordination. You notice that even in near darkness, small tasks continue quietly. One person adjusts the bedding slightly, another shifts a piece of straw to fill a gap near the floor. These movements are subtle but purposeful, a form of labor that keeps warmth circulating and ensures comfort without disturbing others. The rhythm of the room is gentle, each action integrated into the continuous pulse of survival. Evidence from historical record shows that quiet labor during the night was a common practice. Tasks like adjusting bedding, stoking embers, or folding clothes helped maintain heat, conserve energy, and prepare for the morning. Observing this, you understand that even the simplest motion serves a purpose, contributing to the collective endurance of the household. You shift your own body slightly, curling inward to retain warmth while remaining alert to changes around you. The fire radiates unevenly, and every slight movement toward it improves your comfort. Contemporary sources suggest that these micro-adjustments were often made without conscious thought, a form of instinctive knowledge developed over many winters. A lesser-known practice involved using small insulated bundles of straw or cloth to support extremities and prevent heat loss. These items were often tucked under arms, legs, or sides of the body, providing additional warmth in areas most susceptible to cold. You sense similar adjustments here, subtle and silent, yet highly effective. Your eyes drift across the room. Shadows flicker as the firelight moves, revealing shapes you had not noticed before: a simple wooden stool, a small bundle of cloth folded neatly, the faint outline of an implement resting against the wall. Each object has a role, no matter how small, in sustaining comfort and daily routines. Accounts from the period indicate that even minor movements could influence the room's shared warmth. Leaning closer to the fire, curling into a tighter ball, or pressing hands against warm surfaces allowed individuals to conserve energy and share heat efficiently. You notice these strategies at work here mirrored in your own instinctive adjustments. You exhale slowly, drawing in the smoky, earthy scent of straw and embers. The air feels dense, almost tangible, as it carries both warmth and the subtle history of countless nights lived this way. Every breath reinforces your awareness of the space and the delicate balance of heat and stillness that surrounds you. Debate continues regarding whether these practices primarily supported physical survival or also reinforced social bonds. Observing the room, it seems both are true. The quiet coordination of movement, the unspoken attentiveness, and the shared vigilance create not only warmth but subtle connections among inhabitants, fostering mutual reliance and cohesion. You shift your hands slightly toward the hearth, letting the warmth flow gradually through your arms. Even these minor adjustments make a noticeable difference in comfort, demonstrating the importance of small, continuous interactions with the environment. The room operates as a living system, each body, object, and flame contributing to a delicate equilibrium. Historical writings describe how attention to small environmental cues, such as a faint draft or a shift in embers, allowed people to respond immediately, maintaining comfort and safety throughout the night. You notice yourself adopting similar attentiveness. Your senses attune to even the smallest change in temperature, sound, or light. You exhale once more, letting your body relax into the warmth radiating from the fire and the shared presence of others. Every subtle motion, breath, and adjustment contributes to a larger rhythm of endurance. The night stretches long, but within this quiet coordination, survival is maintained steadily, patiently, and attentively. And as you settle further, you realize that even these small acts of quiet labor and attentiveness form an essential part of the rhythm of long winter nights, a choreography of survival that is subtle, continuous, and deeply human. You lift your gaze toward the faint light filtering from the small window, noting how even the slightest movement of air beyond the walls alters the room's atmosphere. The cold outside presses subtly, moving through gaps in the timber, reminding you that the warmth inside is neither permanent nor guaranteed. Every breath, every slight adjustment of posture or blanket responds to this constant gentle pressure. Accounts from the time describe how villagers remained attentive to sounds from outside during long winter nights. The faint shift of wind through trees, the distant cry of an animal, or the subtle movement of snow could all signal changes that required awareness. You notice the same attentiveness in yourself as each tiny noise shapes how you position your body and distribute your attention. You adjust slightly closer to the hearth, letting the warmth reach more fully across your chest and shoulders. Observations from contemporary sources indicate that the strategic placement of bodies and objects to conserve and circulate heat was a critical survival skill. Your movements now mirror those around you, subtle, deliberate, and almost unconscious, shaped by instinct and observation rather than explicit instruction. A lesser-known practice involved keeping small bundles of herbs or dried plants near openings, or bedding to provide both insulation and subtle fragrance. These objects served multiple purposes: practical, comforting, and sometimes ritualistic. You imagine the faint aroma mingling with smoke and straw, contributing to a sense of security and continuity in the space. The fire crackles softly, each pop and shift adding a delicate rhythm to the room. Historical records indicate that maintaining embers required constant attention, with small adjustments in log placement or airflow, ensuring that heat persisted through the night. You notice the movements of others as they tend the fire subtly, each action coordinated with the shared goal of preserving warmth and comfort. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth of the fire and the subtle body heat from those nearby flow into your chest and limbs. The air feels layered, textured, and alive, composed of smoke, straw, and the residual sense of the evening meal. Every inhalation reinforces your awareness of this shared environment. Every exhalation releases tension, aligning you with the space. Debate persists among scholars regarding how environmental awareness during long nights influence both physical endurance and social behavior. Some argue that constant vigilance and shared attentiveness reinforced social cohesion, while others suggest the practices were purely functional, aimed at survival. Observing the quiet coordination here, both interpretations seem accurate practical necessity intertwined with subtle social reinforcement. You notice a faint rustle at the edge of the room, perhaps the adjustment of a blanket or the shift of a person in sleep. Such minor movements, though seemingly insignificant, affect how warmth circulates and how bodies respond. Contemporary research suggests that these micro-adjustments were integral to enduring prolonged cold, demonstrating a refined understanding of the environment developed over generations. Your gaze returns to the flickering flames. The light dances across the timber beams, illuminating rough surfaces and casting long shadows that shift with the fire's movements. You notice how these subtle variations in illumination guide perception, posture, and attention, creating cues that help maintain comfort and stability. Historical notes describe that villagers often relied on these combined cues, sound, light, temperature, and proximity to make continuous micro-adjustments that preserved warmth and minimized exposure. You now experience that attentiveness firsthand, responding instinctively to each minor change, your body aligned with the room's gentle rhythm. You exhale once more, allowing your muscles to relax as you let the warmth fill your chest and shoulders. Every small movement, every subtle observation, and every careful breath contributes to a continuous pattern of endurance. The night stretches endlessly outside, but within this room, life persists steadily, governed by observation, adjustment, and the unspoken coordination of all present. And as you settle further into the shared microclimate of warmth and presence, you realize that long winter nights are navigated not by dramatic effort, but by sustained attention, subtle labor, and quiet, continuous care for both self and others. You stretch your arms slightly, feeling the subtle warmth that has collected along your sides and chest. Even small adjustments to posture create measurable changes in comfort. The room is quiet except for the gentle crackle of the fire and the soft movements of those nearby. Every breath, every micro-movement contributes to the balance of heat and presence. Accounts from the period illustrate that long winter nights demanded constant awareness of temperature and spatial arrangement. People developed finely tuned instincts for how to move, curl, or shift to maximize warmth while conserving energy. You sense this awareness in yourself, responding unconsciously to the environment and the subtle rhythms of the room. Your eyes drift toward the straw bedding in the corner. The rough texture provides insulation, though it is uneven and requires careful positioning. Records indicate that layering straw cloth or even small bundles of herbs under bedding was common, creating pockets of retained heat that could be critical for surviving freezing nights. You notice the small adjustments around you, each movement preserving warmth for self and others. A subtle custom involved rotating sleeping positions throughout the night. Individuals would shift from side to side or adjust proximity to the hearth to maintain an even body temperature. Observing the quiet movements here, you see this pattern unfolding, naturally practiced without instruction and executed instinctively. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth from the fire and the collective body heat of others seep further into your chest. The air is dense with smoke, straw, and the faint traces of the evening meal. Each inhalation grounds you in the shared environment, and every exhalation releases tension, allowing your body to align with the rhythm of the room. Some observers noted that attention to minor environmental cues was essential for survival. Draft shifts in fire intensity or faint noises could signal the need for adjustment. Your own senses have become attuned to these cues, guiding posture, hand placement, and subtle micro-movements to preserve warmth and comfort. Debate remains about whether these nightly practices influence social behaviors beyond survival. Some historians suggest that the necessity of coordination fostered empathy cooperation, and subtle social hierarchies. Others proposed the routines were purely functional, focusing on energy conservation and practical endurance. You notice elements of both efficiency interwoven with more silent collaboration. You tilt your head, slightly observing the flicker of light across rough timber beams. Shadows stretch and contract, creating visual cues that guide attention. These minor variations help inhabitants adjust body position and posture for optimal comfort and heat retention. Historical writings describe how such awareness became an instinctive skill embedded through repeated experience over genera. A lesser-known practice involved keeping small heated objects like stones warmed in the fire near bedding or extremities. These objects radiated heat, slowly augmenting the fire's warmth and providing comfort during sleep. You imagine the presence of such items here, adding an invisible layer of protection against the cold. You breathe in the dense, layered air again. The warmth from the fire and the subtle heat from nearby bodies has created a microclimate. Each breath and subtle movement reinforces your alignment with the room, allowing comfort to persist despite the harsh conditions outside. Accounts indicate that small repetitive actions, shifting a blanket, adjusting clothing, curling fingers or toes, were crucial strategies for endurance. These micro-adjustments, while imperceptible to an outsider, sustained warmth and minimized energy loss. You mirror these behaviors instinctively, your body participating in the collective rhythm of the night. You exhale slowly, letting yourself sink further into the shared environment of warmth, attention, and subtle movement. The night outside stretches endlessly, but inside this carefully balanced space, life continues with steady rhythm, guided by observation, adjustment, and a quiet, continuous attentiveness. You feel the fire's glow shift as embers settle deeper into the hearth, and you notice how even these subtle changes influence the room's warmth. The shadows stretch and contract on the walls, and your body responds, instinctively shifting slightly to capture the optimal heat. Each movement, though small, contributes to the delicate balance of comfort that sustains everyone through the long winter night. Evidence from contemporary sources shows that constant micro-adjustments were vital for surviving freezing nights. People learned to monitor airflow, body positioning, and proximity to others in ways that maximized warmth while conserving energy. You notice these strategies in yourself now, instinctively curling, leaning, or adjusting layers of clothing as needed. Your gaze moves to the faintly glowing embers, noticing the uneven heat distribution. Historical writings describe how the placement of logs, embers, or small heated stones influenced how warmth circulated throughout a room. The practice was so habitual that it often became second nature, performed unconsciously, even in deep sleep. You sense this expertise in the subtle interactions of the occupants around you. A subtle custom involved arranging sleeping positions according to priority of need. The elderly, infirm, or young children were often closest to the fire, while others positioned themselves slightly farther away to preserve the collective heat. You observe the room now and see this quiet coordination occurring without conversation, a testament to learned instincts passed through generations. You inhale, slowly drawing in the dense mix of smoke, straw, and faint traces of herbs tucked near bedding. Each breath is grounding, connecting you to the shared environment. Exhalation releases tension, aligning your body more fully with the rhythms of the room and the gentle pulse of the fire. Accounts from the period indicate that even the smallest movements, such as adjusting a blanket, curling a finger, or shifting a knee, could significantly influence heat retention. You feel yourself mimicking these habits instinctively, each adjustment contributing to comfort and survival. Debate persists among historians regarding whether these practices shaped social cohesion or were purely functional. Some researchers argue that the necessity of coordination and attentiveness fostered subtle cooperation and understanding. Others contend that these behaviors were driven entirely by environmental necessity. In this room, both interpretations appear valid, practical survival interwoven with silent social awareness. You notice how the firelight interacts with the room, Its glow emphasizes textures, shapes, and angles in subtle ways, creating visual cues that help inhabitants orient themselves. These cues guide movement, posture, and awareness, allowing adjustments to be made without conscious calculation. Contemporary research indicates that this environmental attentiveness developed over generations into instinctive skill. A lesser-known practice involved using small bundles of straw or cloth to insulate extremities or cover drafts. These simple techniques, repeated night after night, were highly effective. You sense their subtle influence now as occupants shift slightly, adjusting bedding or clothing in ways that enhance warmth without disruption. You exhale again, letting the combined heat from fire and bodies fill your chest and limbs. The room feels alive in quiet ways. The subtle crackle of embers, the soft rustle of straw, and the gentle movements of those nearby all form a coordinated rhythm. You feel your body synchronized to this pulse, aware that comfort and survival are maintained not through dramatic effort, but through continuous attentive adjustment. Accounts from the era describe how such nighttime strategies, though minor, individually cumulatively ensured endurance. The combination of warmth, attentiveness, and subtle cooperation allowed people to survive some of the harshest winter nights without extreme hardship. You feel yourself immersed in this tradition, participating in the quiet rhythm of life sustained over generations. You relax slightly into the warmth, letting your body and senses absorb the room's subtle patterns. Each movement, each micro-adjustment, reinforces the ongoing balance between cold and heat, attention and stillness, comfort and vigilance. This is the quiet art of enduring a medieval winter night, practiced without fanfare yet essential to life itself. You lean slightly closer to the fire, feeling the gentle heat flow across your arms and chest. The room has settled into a familiar rhythm, punctuated only by small purposeful movements, the rustle of straw, a subtle adjustment of cloth, the faint shift of someone curling their body to conserve warmth. Each motion, though quiet, contributes to the balance of comfort in this shared space. Records indicate that medieval villagers relied on a combination of environmental awareness and careful body management to survive long winter nights. Adjustments to posture, layering of clothing, and proximity to the fire or other bodies created microclimates that were vital to endurance. You notice how your own body has adopted these instincts, unconsciously curling, shifting, and leaning to maximize warmth. Your eyes drift to the embers in the hearth. The glow is steady, but subtle variations catch your attention. A small ember collapsing, a faint flare as another piece of wood settles. Contemporary sources suggest that careful observation of these minor changes informed decisions about where to sit, when to add wood, and how to position oneself relative to the heat. You sense that attention now shaping your movements. A subtle custom involved periodically rearranging bedding or clothing to redistribute warmth. Historical writings describe families rotating positions, adjusting layers, or shifting closer to heat sources without disrupting others. You notice these micro-adjustments occurring naturally, a silent choreography perfected over generations. You inhale slowly, letting the combined scents of smoke, straw, and faint remnants of the evening meal fill your senses. Each breath grounds you in the shared environment. Every exhale allows you to synchronize your posture and subtle movements with the rhythm of the room and the fire. Some observers noted that awareness of even the smallest environmental cues was critical to survival. Drafts' minor temperature differences and variations in ember heat dictated subtle bodily adjustments. You now recognize this heightened awareness within yourself, guiding micro-movements that optimize warmth and energy preservation. Debate continues regarding whether these nighttime routines primarily reinforce social cohesion or served strictly practical purposes. Observing the quiet coordination of the room both appear plausible. The participants display instinctive collaboration, shared awareness, and subtle communication through posture and movement, all while maintaining individual comfort. Your gaze travels along the walls and a ceiling illuminated faintly by the fire. The shadows provide subtle visual cues that help orient your body and hands. Historical records describe how such environmental signals inform daily practice, knowing where warmth concentrated, which corners were drafty, and how to just position without disturbing others. You notice yourself interpreting these cues instinctively. A lesser-known practice involved keeping small bundles of straw or cloth under extremities to provide targeted warmth. These simple techniques, though often unnoticed, could significantly improve comfort. You feel traces of these strategies at work here, reflected in the careful postures and adjustments of the occupants around you. You exhale fully, letting the warmth and shared presence envelop your body. The room pulses with life in quiet ways, the soft crackle of embers, subtle movements, and synchronized breathing combine to form a continuous rhythm. Each micro-action sustains the delicate equilibrium of comfort and vigilance, demonstrating the quiet art of endurance. Evidence from contemporary sources shows that such attentiveness allowed people to endure long cold nights with minimal disruption. Every small motion, every observation, every adjustment contributes to maintaining heat and energy while fostering a collective sense of stability. You are fully immersed in this ongoing unspoken practice, participating in a cycle that has persisted across generations. You lean back slightly, allowing your body to relax while remaining attuned to the room's subtle dynamics. The night stretches on cold outside, yet inside life continues steadily shaped by the observation care and quiet coordination. Endurance here is continuous, delicate, and sustained by both attention and instinct. You settle more fully into your position, feeling the warmth from the hearth and the subtle heat radiating from those around you. The room is quiet, yet it hums with life in the smallest details, the faint rustle of straw, the soft shift of blankets, and the gentle exhalations of those nearby. Every sound, every movement contributes to the delicate balance of comfort and endurance in this space. Accounts from the time suggest that villagers developed intricate strategies for preserving warmth during long winter nights. Layering clothing, sharing proximity, and adjusting body positions were essential techniques passed down through generations. You notice how your own posture and movements have unconsciously adapted to these principles, curling, leaning, and repositioning to maintain heat and comfort. Your eyes drift to the fire. The embers glow steadily, but small flickers and pops draw your attention. Observations from historical records indicate that careful attention to these minor changes was crucial. A subtle shift in the flame, a sudden spark, or a cooling ember could guide how people arranged themselves and tended the hearth. You notice how each individual here responds instinctively, maintaining a rhythm that is continuous yet almost invisible. A subtle practice involved rotating positions during sleep to prevent extremities from becoming too cold and to share warmth efficiently. Historical writings describe this as a learned behavior executed without verbal instruction embedded into the habits of daily life. You see the effects of this practice in the gentle adjustments and micro-movements of the room's occupants. You inhale the layered scent of smoked straw and faint traces of the day's meal. The air feels thick and grounding, and each exhalation allows your body to align more fully with the room's rhythm. Contemporary sources note that such sensory awareness tracking warmth, airflow, and subtle sounds was a vital part of nighttime survival. You feel it now guiding posture, movement, and attention. Some sources note that maintaining a calm, steady environment helped prevent minor discomforts from escalating into serious exposure. Every minor shift in blanket bedding or body position contributed to preserving warmth while minimizing unnecessary movement. You notice your body participating in this quiet, continuous practice. Debate persists over whether these nocturnal routines were purely functional or also influenced social cohesion. In observing this room, both interpretations appear valid. The coordination, attentiveness, and subtle adjustments reinforce connections between individuals while primarily serving survival needs. You glance around the room. Shadows flicker across walls and ceiling, providing subtle visual cues. These changes guide posture and attention without conscious thought. Evidence demonstrates that such environmental cues were critical in helping villagers respond quickly and efficiently to minor changes in heat, light, or airflow. You notice how your senses have adapted, interpreting these signals instinctively. A subtle custom involved keeping small heated stones or clay near bedding to provide additional warmth. Though simple, these practices significantly enhance comfort during long nights. You imagine the heat radiating gently from these objects, supplementing the fire and body heat. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth and collective presence envelop your body. The room's rhythm, composed of minor movements, soft breathing, and flickering firelight, sustains an ongoing pattern of endurance. Every small adjustment reinforces the shared microclimate and the delicate balance of comfort and vigilance. Contemporary writings describe how minor adjustments, observation and coordination allowed people to survive extreme cold without undue strain. You are fully immersed in this practice, participating unconsciously in a rhythm that has been honed over countless generations. Every breath, every motion, every subtle shift contributes to the quiet choreography of survival. You lean back slightly, allowing the warmth to reach your shoulders and chest fully. The night continues outside, cold and unrelenting. But within this carefully balanced space, life persists steadily. You realize that enduring the long winter night is a skill in itself, built on attentiveness, care, and subtle collaboration. You sink deeper into the warmth near the hearth, feeling the heat spread slowly through your arms and chest. The room hums quietly with life, the soft rustle of straw, the occasional adjustment of a blanket, the gentle exhalations of those nearby. Each minor movement contributes to the steady rhythm of the night, a delicate balance between vigilance and rest. Evidence demonstrates that long winter nights required constant attention to micro-environmental changes. Body positioning, layering of clothing, and proximity to heat sources were critical for maintaining warmth. You notice how your body now instinctively adjusts, curling slightly, or leaning toward the fire, following patterns learned through observation rather than instruction. Your gaze moves across the room. Shadows flicker as the flames move, creating subtle cues that help guide posture and attention. Observations from contemporary sources indicate that such visual signals allowed people to respond to shifts in heat or drafts without needing to speak. You sense that your own awareness has tuned to these cues, your body reacting automatically. A subtle practice involved tucking small bundles of straw or cloth beneath extremities to maintain targeted warmth. Historical writings describe these actions as minor but effective strategies for conserving heat. You notice subtle indications of similar practices here in how people position themselves or adjust their blankets, each movement contributing to collective comfort. You inhale slowly, drawing in the dense layered air of smoked straw and faint remnants of food. Each breath connects you more fully to the shared environment. Exhalations release tension and help you align with the rhythm of the room. Accounts from the period illustrate that such sensory awareness was crucial, helping villagers maintain comfort and avoid overexposure to cold. You shift slightly, moving a hand closer to the fire. The warmth flows gently along your fingers and forearms. Observations from historical records indicate that even minor adjustments in body position could significantly affect heat retention. You sense this firsthand, each small movement making the difference between discomfort and relative warmth. Debate persists about whether these practices primarily shaped social behavior or served purely practical survival needs. In this room, both interpretations seem accurate. The unspoken coordination, attentiveness, and subtle cooperation reinforce relationships while ensuring survival during the long, cold hours. You glance at the embers as noting subtle changes in glow and intensity. Evidence suggests that careful observation of fire behavior was an essential skill guiding when to add fuel or shift positioning to preserve warmth. You feel yourself responding to these cues without conscious thought, your body integrated into the room's rhythm. A lesser-known custom involved rotating positions during sleep or rest to evenly distribute warmth and prevent cold extremities. You see this reflected in the gentle adjustments of those around you. These minor motions, practiced instinctively, maintain balance and comfort for everyone present. You exhale slowly, letting the heat and shared presence envelop your body. The room moves almost imperceptibly, a quiet, continuous choreography of survival. Every micro-movement, every subtle adjustment, every flicker of light contributes to the delicate equilibrium that allows life to endure. Accounts from the time describe how the tension, coordination and awareness allowed villagers to navigate long winter nights effectively. You sense yourself participating in this ongoing tradition guided by instinct observation and the rhythms of shared experience. And as you settle fully into the warmth, letting your body align with the space, you realize that the endurance of these nights relies on small, deliberate actions, constant attention, and a shared, quiet understanding that has persisted across generations. You let your body settle, fully curling slightly into the warmth that gathers near the hearth. The room hums softly with life. Faint rustles of straw, subtle shifts of blankets, and the measured breathing of those around you. Each sound, each micro-movement adds to a quiet rhythm that has persisted through the night. You feel yourself becoming part of it, aligned with the pulse of warmth, attention, and endurance. Accounts from the period illustrate that enduring long winter nights required constant awareness. People learned to monitor draft shifts in fire intensity and even small movements of others to maintain comfort and conserve energy. You notice how your own posture and breathing have become intuitive, responding unconsciously to the rhythms of the room. Your eyes wander to the flickering firelight. Shadows stretch and contract across the walls and ceiling, providing subtle cues for orientation and positioning. Observations from contemporary sources indicate that such visual signals guided adjustments in posture and hand placement, helping maintain warmth and balance with minimal effort. A subtle practice involved placing heated stones or small bundles of straw near extremities or along bedding. Historical writings describe these methods as minor but effective enhancements to warmth. You sense similar strategies in action here, reflected in the subtle curling of limbs and careful placement of coverings. You inhale slowly, drawing in the combined scents of smoke straw and the faint remnants of the evening meal. The density of the air reinforces your connection to the space and those around you. Every exhale allows you to synchronize further with the room's rhythm, aligning your body and senses with the collective microclimate. Evidence demonstrates that even minor adjustments, shifting a hand, curling a knee, or leaning slightly toward the fire, were essential survival strategies. These small motions conserved energy and heat, allowing inhabitants to endure long nights without severe discomfort. You notice your body participating instinctively in this practice, each movement contributing to collective comfort. Debate persists regarding whether these nighttime habits primarily influenced social cohesion or were purely functional. Observing the quiet coordination here, it is evident that both factors played a role. Subtle cooperation and shared awareness enhanced relationships while ensuring survival, blending practicality with unspoken social bonds. Your gaze drifts along the walls, noting rough timber beams, small bundles of cloth, and simple household implements. Each element plays a part in maintaining comfort, providing insulation or supporting daily life. Contemporary sources suggest that the careful arrangement of objects and people was a learned skill honed over generations to maximize warmth and minimize discomfort. A lesser-known practice involved rotating sleeping positions throughout the night to prevent cold extremities and distribute warmth evenly. You notice this subtly in the movements of those around you, a quiet coordination that preserves comfort without verbal instruction or conscious thought. You exhale slowly again, letting the warmth flow through your chest and shoulders. The room moves in quiet harmony, every breath shift and flicker of light contributing to a continuous rhythm. Observations from historical records indicate that attentiveness to these micro-details was vital, allowing people to survive harsh winters with minimal disruption. You feel yourself merging with the space, aligned with its subtle patterns of warmth, sound, and light. Endurance here is neither passive nor dramatic. It is continuous, delicate, and reinforced through observation, instinct, and collaboration. The night stretches outside, cold and unyielding, yet within this carefully balanced space, life continues steadily. And as you settle into the warmth and rhythm, you realize that surviving a long winter night is an ongoing practice. It depends on subtle attention, small adjustments, and shared vigilance. The quiet coordination, the flicker of the fire, and the attentive presence of others form a continuous, enduring pattern that has sustained generations through winter's long dark hours. You lie quietly now, letting the warmth of the fire and the subtle presence of those around you envelop your body. Every breath flows gently, the rhythm slow and steady. The chill from outside fades into the background, softened by layers of cloth-shared body heat and the gentle glow of embers. Your muscles release tension, your shoulders drop, and your mind drifts lightly unburdened, following the quiet pulse of the room. Observations from the period indicate that winter nights demanded both attention and patience. Even as sleep approached, people remained aware of micro-changes in temperature drafts and subtle movements around them. You feel this awareness now gentle and unobtrusive, allowing your body to relax while remaining in harmony with the space. Small details anchor you. The soft crackle of embers, the rustle of straw, the flicker of shadows across walls. Each sound is comforting, each sensation steady and predictable. Historical records describe how these elements contributed to a sense of security and continuity, creating a quiet order in the midst of long, cold darkness. You draw your blanket closer, letting warmth seep into every limb. The night is expansive outside, yet here inside you are safe. Every micro-movement, every exhalation, every attentive posture of those around you reinforces the gentle rhythm of endurance. The room breathes softly with life, and you are part of it now. A subtle practice of the time involved synchronizing body movements with environmental cues, adjusting position to maximize warmth, curling to conserve heat, or remaining still to maintain comfort. You experience this instinctively now, each small motion supporting your own ease. The fire glows quietly, shadows dancing softly across the walls. You feel connected to generations who experience this same pattern, enduring the night with patience, care, and unspoken coordination. Every flicker, every warmth, every breath is a continuation of that legacy. Your eyes close gently. The room fades softly, the chill outside distant, the warmth inside persistent. Each moment is slow, deliberate, and serene. You drift in this quiet, mindful rhythm carried by warmth, presence, and the enduring patterns of life. Now the night feels like a gentle embrace, your mind and body aligned. The long winter hours softened by rhythm, awareness, and care. It comes quietly steady and complete. Sweet dreams.